Oops. Oops, wait a minute. There you go. So we're just gonna eliminate some people, and then we're gonna do our introductions and the start of the meeting, and then bring up our first agenda item. So that's why I'm turning off some videos. Okay, I think we have everyone. Okay, so hello everyone. Welcome to the Reading Conservation Commission. My name is Chuck Tironi. I'm the Reading Conservation Administrator, and consistent with the governor's orders superseding certain provisions of the open meeting law and allowing us to adhere to social distancing requirements during the COVID-19 crisis, this Town of Reading Conservation Commission meeting is being held virtually via Zoom and for audio and video participation of the commissioners, applicants, and their representatives and the public. During the meeting, myself or the chair will unmute commissioners, applicants, representatives, and members of the public individually as needed. During the conservation meeting, the chair will be the only one to permit people to share video. These controls are in place to ensure that tonight's meeting are safe and effective. At this time, Vice Chair Martha Moore, who is standing in for the chair tonight, will conduct a roll call vote to confirm that all members are present and that they can hear. Martha?
All right, roll call order in the order I see you on my screen. Brian Bowe.
Brian Bowe, member present.
Andrew.
Andrew Driven, member present.
John.
Recording in
John
progress.
Sullivan, member present.
Joe.
Joe Carnahan, member present.
And Martha Moore, member present. We do have a quorum, having 5 members here tonight.
Thank you, everyone. Please take note that this meeting is being recorded. Also, be aware that other folks may be able to see you. Anything that you broadcast may be captured by this recording. All of the material for this meeting is available on the Conservation Division site, and I recommend that commission members and the public follow the agenda as posted on the Reading webpage unless otherwise noted. However, because this meeting is being conducted remotely, I advise the applicant in particular that the commission cannot discuss or consider documents which are not previously posted. Information may, however, be presented orally. Similarly, members of the public are encouraged to provide written public comment, but should understand that not all participants nor the commission members will be able to see any written comments during the course of this meeting. Before we get started on tonight's agenda, I'm going to go over some ground rules for safe and effective and clear conduct of our business and to ensure that accurate minutes are taken. For any response, please wait until the chair yields the floor to you and state your name before speaking. After commissioners make their remarks, and these remarks have been addressed by the applicant, the chair will afford the public comments as follows. The chair will first ask members of the public who wish to speak to identify themselves by name. Once the chair has a list of public commentators, the chair will call out each one by name and afford them 4 minutes for comment. Applicants may be requested to respond by the chair or the conservation administrator. After the public comment, the chair will once again go down the list of commissioners, inviting each one by name to provide further comment, questions, or motions. please hold off until your name is called. Finally, as a reminder, each vote taken during tonight's meeting will be conducted by roll call. Okay, Martha, that's what I have.
All right. We are going to go through
I'm having trouble hearing Martha. Am I the only one?
No, me too.
And it will be continued. Maybe I should turn my microphone up louder. Microphone. Okay, that's as loud as it is. Is that any better?
It sounded like a bad connection rather than a volume question, but please try.
All right, so we're going to go through the agenda in order. And we have a number of hearings that have been continued till next week. So I hope we'll get through things relatively speedily. Is that better?
That sounded good.
Oh, good. I had a microwave going in the background that might have interrupted the communication with the computer, perhaps. Okay. All right. So our first agenda item is Matera Cabin Conservation Area Community Garden Review and Discussion. The request and plans can be viewed on the Conservation Division page under Current Project, Assessors Map 56, Lot 86, 1481 Main Street. I see Kathy Zeke is here. Can we let her?
Kathy, Simone, and let's have permissions to, as co-hosts, so they can turn the video on and unmute.
Okay. Welcome, Kathy.
Thank you, Martha. And there is one more person who will be co-presenting this evening, Celeste Crocky. So if she could have access, that would be great.
Okay. So 3 altogether, right?
3 altogether.
We have that. Okay.
Okay, perfect. So Chuck, are you going to share the PDF that I sent you with slides?
I am.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. So thanks again to the commission this evening. And we are here this evening to request your approval to locate the Reading Community Garden in the Matera Conservation Area. You have several documents that we've sent that give some background and some proposed operations for the community garden. And we're going to be going through a quick PowerPoint. Some of you attended a forum earlier this month and you got to see this, some of this information. You either were there January 5th at the forum for the abutters in the community, or perhaps January 8th at the select board. Could you go to the next slide, please, Chuck?
Okay.
Thank you. So like I said, I am Kathy Zeke, and I am here with Simone Payment and Celeste Crocky. We're going to share the stage this evening. The 4th member of our exploratory group, Sue Sheely, is not able to be here this evening, but I want to recognize her participation. As background, Reading's sustainability plan includes launching a community garden. And last year, the Climate Advisory Committee sent the Select Board a proposal for a $10,000 set aside to do just that. So when the funding was approved, this small group began working with town staff to make the garden a reality. At this point, we've identified criteria for a garden, drafted an initial plan, and again, we're here this evening requesting approval to locate the garden at the Matera Conservation Area. Next slide, please. Planning for the conservation is most definitely a collaborative effort. Staff in the Town Planning Division, the Conservation Division, and the DPW provided invaluable expertise, guidance, and feedback, and members of the Conservation Commission, as well as members of the public, have added questions and ideas. And of course, you're giving a first review of the plans tonight. I also want to note an interesting attendee at the January 5th meeting, Ida Matera Fitzgerald, whose family originally owned the land, attended, and she gave the garden a thumbs up. In fact, she said this was exactly the type of use the family had hoped for. So realizing that the plans are evolving, let's visit the community garden. Simone?
So first we'll talk briefly about why we're having a community garden. They've been part of communities around the world for many years, and they come in all shapes and sizes, and the purposes vary depending on a community's needs and goals. But they share a focus on building community connections and using available land to grow food for community and individual use. Reading's community garden meets one of the goals of our sustainability plan, and it will create a community gathering space, allow residents to grow food and flowers for their own use or for donating to the Reading Food Pantry. We'll create opportunities for educational programming around gardens, sustainability, and related topics, and will enhance a currently underutilized space. While researching community gardens, we looked at a few in the area, including one at the First Baptist Church in Reading and the J.J. Round Community Garden in Wakefield. Next slide, please. So I'll talk briefly about the two gardens that are closest by. The First Baptist Church is the first. It's located on Sanborn Street. The church established the garden in 2018 as part of their church outreach, and it was built as part of an Eagle Scout project. Their 16 plots that are 5 by 10 have been full since they opened the garden, and they've had a waiting list each year. The church doesn't charge a fee for use, and they pay for water and other costs. The area is not fenced except for low fencing to discourage rabbits, and they have not had a problem with vandalism. Next slide, please. This is the J.J. Round Community Garden in Wakefield, which was launched in 2020 using state and town funds. And it's 46 raised beds, which are 4 by 8, have been full every year. They are assigned by lottery, and they've had a waiting list each year. The town manages the park, and they absorb water costs beyond what is paid for by the $50 gardener fee. And next slide. So we looked at a range of gardens in our area and visited some neighboring gardens and talked with some of their directors. Overall, the big picture criteria we identified include accessibility, space for at least 12 plots with potential for expansion, ample sun and good drainage, nearby water lines, and a flexible site design with potential to enhance an existing public space for new uses. And Celeste is going to talk more specifically about Matera.
We considered several potential sites in Reading, and as shown here, Matera met many of our criteria, including sunlight and space for potential expansion. Next slide, please. On this detailed plan for phase 1 development, the green shading represents a pollinator garden between the lot and terrace 1, the lowest full terrace. The rectangles on terrace 1 show 17 garden plots, and the multi-armed figure points to ailing trees to be removed. The blue line extending from the cabin indicates the water line for the garden. A drip irrigation system with a programmable timer will be attached and managed by garden coordinators. Next slide, please. We envision phase 1 to be available this year after the town and garden group improve the space to make it garden ready. Later phases could add 30 or more plots. Next slide, please. The future has been integral to planning the Matera garden. Gardeners will use organic practice to protect the environment and facilitate turnover, and be encouraged to grow native plants. Drip irrigation and native plants are among the best water conservation methods, a key factor for environmental and financial sustainability. We've also considered building materials, environmental impacts, and long-term durability when budgeting for phase 1. This slide shows some, but not all of the future possibilities we've brainstormed. Some, like rainwater collection, would enhance sustainability. Others, inclusivity efforts. No timetables are attached. Other needs and circumstances might well crop up as the garden grows. And now we'll turn this back to Kathy to wrap up our PowerPoint.
And if you go to the next slide, please, Chuck. Of course, there are administrative considerations, and I get to talk about those briefly. I want to give you just an overview and not get too far into the weeds, pun intended. Starting in year 1, Reading residents will be invited to apply for the garden plots. If there are more applicants than there are plots, we'll assign the plots by lottery, and those who don't receive a plot will go on a waiting list in case plots do become available. In subsequent years, gardeners will have the option of re-upping for their plots, and we're considering making it a 3-year horizon to allow for more folks to be able to participate. Thank you for the suggestions. If plots are still available, we'll go through the application process again. And as the second and third phases open up, we do expect that more plots will be available, and we would be delighted for there to continue to be clamoring for those plots. There's a $50 fee per year for garden expenses, which is typical for our area, and of course that will be evaluated annually. Additional funding could come through grants, as well as donations of time and materials from groups like the Scouts, from community groups, and from local businesses. The garden will be managed collaboratively, including town staff, Conservation Commission, and volunteers. And they'll take on tasks ranging from assigning plots to resolving conflicts to communicating with gardeners and the community, and to organizing opportunities for sharing and education. Gardeners must sign an agreement that lays out guidelines and specifies that violations may lead to losing one's plot. In the good neighbor category for this shared space, the garden is low noise. Anybody who wants to garden while listening to music or podcasts needs to use headphones or earbuds, and hand tools only, no gas or electric. Children must be directly supervised by a gardener who's on site, and there are no pets allowed in the space. Next slide, please. This is a shared space, and one of the concerns always is parking, since it's such a scarce resource. Here you see some ways that the parking can be managed, especially when a group has reserved the cabin. The garden management, the collaborative group, will review and revise the guidelines as needed, particularly at the end of the first year, and including input from the gardeners. With that summary, we would welcome conversation, feedback, and moving to any other information that's needed.
Martha, you're muted if you're talking.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much, Kathy and Celeste and Simone, for your presentation. Are there any questions about this from members of the Conservation Commission?
I assume, Martha.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay. So the first one I have is concerning the parking. I know in the documents that were sent around earlier today, you said that there were 18 spots plus some ADA, or one ADA spot. I'm not sure it's 1 or 2. That does seem a little bit tight, but anyway, so in the beginning, especially when this is more of a novelty and what have you, who's going to be policing that, if you will, besides the police? Who's going to be watching for people parking on Route 20? So who's going to make this start well, in other words? Anyone?
I would imagine, Brian, that it would need to be, again, a collaborative effort. One of the things that we're looking forward to doing is meeting with the gardeners at least once before we get too far into this, and emphasizing some things like the need to be very compliant, I guess, in terms of parking restrictions. Clearly, there is no parking on 28, so that should be something that they don't do. And then we'll go through some guidelines with the gardeners to share the space, to be good neighbors. One of the issues with that main parking lot, of course, is that the spaces are not striped. So kind of the first couple of people who are in hopefully are setting the standard for reasonable parking. And it's something that we are going to have to monitor. We will have access for the gardeners to the reservation sign-up calendar for the space. And one of the things that we will emphasize is that whoever signed up for the space, if someone has reserved it, has priority. So the gardeners will need to recognize that. There is on the detailed plan, or excuse me, the plot plan that we showed briefly, there is a drop-off area, which the gardeners will be encouraged to use. Well, they'll be directed to use. The green rectangle at the bottom of the screen is this drop-off area that DPW will be creating. So if there is a crowd at the space, then the gardeners will be able to drop off their stuff. And then seek parking perhaps at the Pearl Street location. We'll also encourage gardeners to consider carpooling or sharing rides with other gardeners.
Okay. So another point is having to do with the 3-year term that you were talking about when it comes to people re-upping year after year. In the documents we received earlier today, in a couple of them, it actually said that it was a 3-year term, and that if somebody wanted to continue, they could, only if there were plots available. What you just said in your presentation is that it's under consideration. So I guess what's being considered, who's doing the consideration, have at it.
The documents make it sound definite, I guess. And
Yes.
So we are definitely open to suggestions. I think that's reasonable. That was a suggestion that came up at one of the forums, which seemed like a good way to make sure that we're opening it up to additional people, that the same small group isn't always the one that's there. So my take is the suggestion is that we have the 3-year horizon. And as we work on approval with you all, that can evolve, certainly.
So what will it take to make that definite and have it be more than just a consideration?
Decision of this group.
Okay. Okay, I'm for it.
So if y'all accept the proposals that we've put together, then it would be definite.
Okay, so we'll have to see how that goes this evening. So my next question is having to do with the water. Again, somewhere in your documents, you talked about it being on a timed system. Is that timing going to adhere to the Reading odd even water restrictions?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. All right, then my last question point has to do with the dumping of any excess materials, any soil, any, remember last time I said I'm not a gardener, my wife is. So any of the little sticks you use to support plants, for example, just to make sure none of those things get chucked over the side of plots or of a terrace, just because it's a convenient way to throw things.
Yes, that can be a convenient way to throw things. Among the stipulations that we have for the gardeners is that I think you're talking about a couple of different categories. Trash is it's remove it. The idea, the leave no trace kind of idea.
Yep,
So gardeners are told that they need to take their trash away when they go. As far as the other pieces, one of the things that our garden coordinator, our informal group will do is to wander through the garden regularly and notice any problems that seem to be arising. Again, the gardeners are asked to clean up after themselves to make sure that they're not leaving anything in the walkways, that things are left neat. And if we see any problem plots, then certainly those gardeners will be contacted and reminded of that agreement. One of the things that I would imagine doing is when I'm there, just kind of walking around with a composting bag and collecting things that I see. So that will.
Okay, so I did see that in your documents about the compost bag or bin there and the invasives go to people's trash. I get that, I agree with that. I was more concerned about things being thrown beyond the confines of the garden, outside your rabbit fence, if you will.
Yeah, if we see that if that is becoming a problem, Brian, we'll certainly remind the gardeners that they need to be aware of that. If we can identify where it came from, we'll be with that particular gardener. Am I getting at your question?
You are. As in many things to do with the commission, it does come back down to trust but verify. So basically you're counting on the gardeners to be good conservation citizens. I understand that. I just wanted to express my concern about people's commitment to that sometimes, but I think I've weighed on that enough. So that's my last point. So back to you, Martha.
Thank you, Brian.
Thank you.
Okay, could I jump in just for a second before we lose some of Brian's points? On the parking, I didn't hear it come up in this discussion, but I know that Kathy and I have spoke about a couple other things that would help alleviate parking issues, which would be there wouldn't be any gardeners at the Matera cabin site during Matera birthday and conservation or recreation rentals. That would they would have to be at the Pearl Street parking lot. So during those days, there's a calendar and the gardeners would be asked to check the calendar. But there's also talk about having the people that rent the cabin put out a sign saying that the parking lot is full. Gardeners must park down at the Pearl Street site. So that's one of the ways we're going to take, at least one group out of the mix. We don't know if there's going to be a problem, but we're preparing just in case. So that's the no parking during the cabin use, except for at the Pearl Street lot. So, and then on heavy use days, which would probably be end of season and the beginning of season, the intention was to actually reserve the cabin so no one would have access, and then they could utilize all the parking spots except for the people that wanted to use Bear Meadow. So that's some of the thoughts behind how we're going to manage the parking in that area.
Thanks for that reminder, Chuck. It's also, I think it's going to be very much the case. These are 4x8 plots. So for the most part, gardeners will be there for perhaps a couple of hours. Like Chuck said at the beginning, we're planning to reserve the whole space for gardeners beginning and end so that they can get things set up and then taken down in a timely way.
Any other members of the commission with questions or comments? Joe Carnahan?
Thanks, Martha. So let's see on the, actually, I have a question just based on that very last comment about reserving the cabin. Just out of curiosity, because I know the Matera cabin doesn't run an enormous surplus in terms of its costs, relative to its rentals. Is this actually, is the garden group going to be paying for a reservation, or is it just a calendar block when it can't be reserved by anyone else?
So the garden
We'll-
club, yeah. I'm just going to do this first, and then Kathy, you could chime in. So we have another renter or user of the cabin, and that's the Trails Committee. And they're there, they're using space, and it's looked at, we have an opportunity to give them what they need, and they take care of the trails in the town. The community garden, it would be great if they had enough money to rent the space, but the Conservation Commission doesn't directly benefit from any of that money. It goes right into the general fund, and then the facilities manager or department head is in control of it. So it's not actually even used on any upkeep. That being said, they need money too to repair the garden. But the community garden are going to take care of the pollinator garden. And there was talk, I had asked that maybe they might want to sponsor the island out in front that splits the traffic on the way in and out. And there's other things that, that we're going to get for them using the property. So I think the benefit, equals out. And it's quite possible that the days they need it are not going to be rented out. There's not a lot of rental. It would have to build up again. We actually just looked at Munis, and I think our biggest year in the last 5 or so was like a $1,500 year. And maybe 7 years ago, we had something around $2,000. So that's kind of where the cabin runs. And the upkeep of the cabin is right around $2,500 to $2,500, depending on how cold the winter gets. So that's my thoughts on it. Kathy, go ahead and take over, chime in.
No, I think that makes sense. If it turns out that we are looking to try to reserve it at a time that for some reason is really busy, then we can certainly consider compensating for that. However, I think that the times we're going to be looking at it are not going to be heavy use times for other rentals.
That all sounds fine to me. I mean, certainly the community having a community garden is an enormous value in itself. So I was just curious about that and looking for clarification. Brian, you look like you were trying to raise your hand. Did you want to comment on this particular topic, or should I go on to my next question?
Yeah, just really quickly, this was a thought prompted by the conversation that just happened. It seems to me from the commission perspective, this might be a place that we could look into getting some signage, essentially saying this is conservation land and you're welcome and care for it properly and what have you, a little publicity, if you will, from the conversation. Yes, from our perspective.
Yes.
Okay, on that note, I'll be quiet again.
Oh, thank you. All right. I had another question actually going back to the, because I did attend the January 5th information session that you talked about, which was very informative. Thank you. One thing that was discussed then was the subject of fencing, because, happily the, Bear Meadow Conservation Area is, home to all kinds of wildlife, some of which is hungry. So I'm curious what the latest thinking is on trying to, have any sort of fencing that would keep deer out, because we've I assume we are talking about deer as far as the most challenging residents of Bear Meadow that you would want to keep in Bear Meadow. And so I'm curious what the updates are on trying to fence the area in a way that's hopefully not too obtrusive.
Celeste has done some great research on different fencing options and looking for things that will blend rather well into the landscape. So could you take that one?
Sure. So in brief, I think I mentioned at the previous meeting, and I'll mention again, at the moment, we are leaning towards polypropylene mesh fencing. Generally comes about 7.5 feet tall. It is generally green or black, so not terribly obtrusive. This would go around the first terrace, at least for right now. Part of the challenge with the terracing is how to expand the fencing with the hopefully expanding garden over time. And the fact that animals could get up on the stone walls themselves to try to jump over. So that kind of presents some logistical challenges to different options we could pursue. But at this point, both in terms of cost and flexibility, it seems to make the most sense to try to enclose that first full terrace level with this mesh deer fencing, and then give the garden subscribers the option to put smaller temporary enclosures around their immediate plots if they so choose. So perhaps they'd want to put rabbit fencing in. I don't see that as being a particular problem with the deer fencing around the whole perimeter there, but that would allow them the option so long as they take it down at the end of the season. Does that answer your question?
I think so. Would it be possible? I don't think the location of the fencing is not on any of the drawings that we have right now, is it?
No, not
Yeah,
presently.
I would be curious to see that, just so I can help. Again, I love looking at the pictures and plans and so forth. That's how I tend to understand things. So that would be great if I could get to see that at some point. Thanks.
Could I chime in and ask some follow-up questions to the fencing? Can you let us know the height and how it's installed and the access points for the fence? And
Sure.
if they're going to be gates, or I'm assuming you're going to say it's a 7-foot fence.
Yeah.
And so is it a door?
They would be, I believe the options I was looking at were 7 or 7.5 feet. They are held up by T-posts, which are metal posts with little notches to hold the mesh, generally spaced at about 8 to 10 foot intervals. As to gates, we still have to work out the exact options for those, because presently we have, I believe the drawing shows 2 points of access to the garden, one at the far end and one by an existing set of steps partway along. And it does pose, again, some logistical challenges there in terms of how to position a gate.
So these posts are driven into the ground. Is that it? Just like a smaller 4-foot one?
Yes.
You would just drive it in the ground. So
exactly.
It's metal.
Right.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I guess I would just suggest you could just overlap a lot and then pin it. And because when people were there during the day, they could just, open it wide and at both ends, and then just make sure that was closed at the end of the day. And it seems like if there was access at the ends, that would work out. Anyways, that's what came into my mind. Or maybe there's a gardener out there that is also a carpenter, and you could have them build a door.
That would be fabulous.
And then attach the fence to that. So, okay, well, I appreciate you going over how that was installed. And so that's going to be quite a lot. I think it's around like 300+ feet, certainly. So, and that was the storage for this at the end of the season is off-site.
I think we would have to figure out where to put that, but probably.
Well, there's 2 options. Leaving it, which, I'm just thinking out loud. So you could leave it in place, or you could take it down and store it. I'm not sure what the commission wants. But
In terms of bill rails, it should be able to withstand weatherizing over the winter, if that's a consideration. But in terms of aesthetics or whatnot, in terms of commission's preferences, I leave that to you guys.
It's
Yeah.
hard for me to picture taking the posts out every winter. Even if you were to take the polypro off of the posts, it strikes me that if you're putting in posts sturdy enough for the deer not to knock them down, you'd probably leave the posts in, even if you took down the fence.
Yeah, that would be my inclination too, Martha. It seems like it's enough of a project to set it up that if it can stay up, that's probably the better option.
Andrew?
Thanks, everyone, for all the work into this. I'm excited for it. I do have some concerns, though. And one is just, I see this as a work in progress. You're going to have to figure things out as you go. So from our point of view as the Conservation Commission, I mean, I'm not sure what we're approving, like down to the details of the fence, or just, yes, you can move forward with the community garden in this location. And since our concern is to make sure this is going to last a long time, and it's going to be here for a while, there's some initial costs, which I know you have a budget, and I saw how you're trying to figure things out, but I'm not understanding how we're paying for the water line, who's taking out the trees, who's paying for that, and then just these initial costs, which if I were to take them out of my own home would be substantial. Those were worked into the budget, so I'm curious, is that just being paid for by the DPW? Where is that? Because that wasn't in the budget that I saw.
Yes, DPW is taking on that work.
And they're taking on the price, so they're doing it, and that's not included. Like, it's still a little confusing to me, but I'm grateful that that's happening. So that's good. I am worried about parking, but I do think that's another trial and error thing. This is not the ideal location for a community garden in my mind, in terms of just being people able to walk there from their homes and things like that. Perhaps people can bike there. That may not be the type of folks that want to garden there, but so maybe we consider bike parking. But again, that's the type of thing I think we'll consider if we see people biking there. I don't know how they would get there. I guess off Pearl Street more likely, because Main Street would be terrifying. So again, I'm just like, and then phasing, if this is successful, we're doing that first terrace, something I raised before, and I remembered at the site visit, to level off the upper levels, might do damage to the lower levels when we do them later. So is the DPW going to try to get some of that ready just now, so it'll be easier when the time comes, or we'll just tackle that if and when we're ready for an expansion?
Chuck, you may have had further conversations, but I believe that it's more option B, Andrew, that we'll need to decide what exactly we want to do as a whole collaborative group with those upper levels when we get there. Personally, I think it'd be really cool if we had like a pergola up there where people would be able to enjoy the pollinator garden and just watch the rainbows and the bunnies and everything. But we'll see where we want to go. Sorry,
Sure.
You're getting into my fantasy there about gardening.
And I'm going to add to that, Andrew. So there has been a lot of staff time put into this project. And the DPW was brought in because obviously we don't have the toys that they have. And I do want you to know that when I first got here, me and the last conservation chair, Mike Flynn, had requested that the DPW create a larger, more formal parking area. So what you see there now is a request that I made to the DPW to improve the parking. I think that the DPW did this project and put in the time because ultimately it's town property and it's a town use, and running the water line seemed like a good use that they could buy into. Public Services bought into it, and so did the DPW. So some of the things that they're going to be doing is taking down the apple trees that are located in the center of the field area. And those apple trees are old. They're not producing very well. It would be great to get trees to replace them, but that's just not how the agreement works with the tree warden. So those are coming down, but that's the responsibility of the DPW. They're going to be doing some trimming also, but during our site visit, there's some trees that they found were dead that they want to take down while they're there. Now, each terrace will be graded along with a ramp that heads up to the cart path. And the cart path is located going up the hill just in front of where the 10-minute parking area is. And it also is the location for the water line. So this is our central spot here, kind of the central jump off spot for Tier 1 and the gardens that we intend to have extremely accessible. We're looking into creating accessible gardens, raised gardens in this area. And certainly in this area, we would want to have signage to notify the gardeners of the rules, and not only of the garden, but of the conservation area and the parking and all that. So some signage. So installing that sign, putting in the water, grading out the terrace area, each one of these, taking down the trees and doing some trimming over in this area here is all the responsibility and what the DPW has taken on as their role in this project. The DPW also mows the upper field and around the Matera, and they actually do some of the trimming for me when I ask in this area. So that's their role. Town Council has helped out a lot with the gardeners agreement and some other material that we needed. And Jean Delios has been very helpful, and with her background on making sure that we have thought of everything that could happen, and we should expect during like season 1, 2, and 3. So we've had many staff meetings and, with the DPW, and Ryan Percival and myself and Kathy have all spoke about the plans and added things as they've come up. And I think one of the things that we might add is the fencing, because someone said they wanted to see that. And so the next iteration of the plans will have the fencing around that, or just located, but we won't get into too much detail. And the last thing I want to mention is, you're right, this is kind of a process, and everyone understands what a garden is, but it's the location, it's the shared use, it's the unknown about how many people are going to want it, and we're trying to anticipate all those things. But I think with the amount of staff time that we have and the commitment from Kathy, Celeste, and Simone, I don't think that we'll be stumped for long if a problem comes up. I think one thing that I would ask Kathy to outline is the responsibilities of the garden coordinator, because I think, even though I understand what that means because I've read it in the gardeners agreement, the commission and other people online might not understand the responsibilities and how the garden coordinator is the lead person and the point person that has to interact between the conservation office and the gardeners. So if you want to add some more to that, Kathy, that would be good.
Yeah, that is a document that needs to be fleshed out, because we do have the garden administrator, and we've got various titles and terms have been thrown around for these different roles, but we have Chuck, the conservation administrator, is definitely a part of this. We have a set of garden coordinators, at least that's what they're typically called with some of the other gardens. Conscom is certainly welcome to take on roles here. So we've got a few people who are involved, and we need to specify who's going to do the publicity for the garden availability, what the mechanism is that we use to receive applications, what the mechanism is for receiving and depositing the $50 fees, the specifics of planning meetings with the gardeners, who follows up with the gardeners, like Brian, with your questions of, when somebody needs to be contacted, then how are we going to get that done? What happens during off hours? All sorts of things. Those details we'll need to specify.
Okay. Keeping an eye on the time. We haven't heard from John. Do you have anything else you wanted to ask, John?
I think we've covered most of my questions. I just had one additional quick one. That water line currently looks like it runs up to like that first terrace. Is that going to be sufficient to provide water for the additional terraces once they come online, or is that line going to have to be extended?
I am happy to defer to Chuck on the water. I believe that we had talked about it needing to be extended as we go on up the hill. So that, Chuck, I don't want to speak out of my knowledge.
I think if it's needed, it can happen. I think it would be best if all the water extended from that spot. I think there was a thought in the future that somehow we would try to get water at the top of the hill with a pump and then have gravity feed everything. But I think we're only concentrating on terrace number 1, and this would probably provide for terrace number 2 also, but 3 and above that, I'm not sure. I don't remember any conversation about extending it, though. I thought that was the extent of where the water went. And then the rest would be just temporary lines being rolled out to however it was accessed.
All right, and it looks like Andrew has his hand up. Were you not finished, Andrew?
I mean, Martha, if you want to go first. I just want to move this forward. I'm in favor of it for whenever the time comes to vote. I just want to be clear on what we're supporting. Are we supporting the use of our land to be used as a community garden? Is there an organization that we're saying so that we're not micromanaging all your decisions? Are we letting the Reading Community Garden use this space? I just want to clarify, what is it that we're actually trying to approve here? Because I'm in favor. I just don't want to keep going on and on with a lot of these details.
Chuck, do you have an answer for that?
I think all that's being decided. This is for year 1. This is a town project. And in the future, we requested that the community garden group become a 501(c)(3) organization, and then they can take on some of the responsibilities. That just wasn't possible in the first year. So this may evolve, but certainly it's on conservation land. It's on land and care and custody of the Conservation Commission. So this is our responsibility, and that's why whoever the garden coordinator is has to speak to me, and we have to review it, and there has to be some system to work back and forth with each other. But a lot of the questions you're asking are just not resolved at this point.
Okay, Brian?
Yeah, I have a question. This is actually for you, Chuck, more than anything else. So if this is approved, is this approved for all time? If, imagine anything that could go wrong does go wrong, can we renege? Can we take away approval? Can we ask them to roll up shop and move to Hunt Park? I mean, how final is this?
We'll just give it the business plan. You get 5 years to know if your business is going to live and die. Just look back and evaluate it after that. I think the damage that would be done with a garden is minimal. We have a water line, some wood, some soil, that doesn't seem to be a problem. It's something that was approved by staff, by the assistant town manager. So any cleanup wouldn't be hard to ask for. So I don't really think that's a problem.
Okay.
Okay, I did have a couple of questions of my own. One is where the handicap parking is going to be and access ramp to allow people who have mobility issues to get up to that first terrace. So let's start with that one.
We do have, Chuck's going to get the picture up. There is handicap parking existing at the cabin near the crosswalk that goes over to the cabin. So that will be available. The ramp that will go up the hill it's marked cart path at this point, and that's being graded. DPW is going to grade that so that it will be navigable.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
But only to the first terrace.
Right.
The other terrace.
Thank you.
Yeah, so we're really grading out between the handicap spot and the first terrace, kind of heading screen south to north.
Mm-hmm. So the only issue I have with that is your 10-minute drop-off spot is blocking the bottom of that handicap ramp. So if somebody comes who is parking in the handicap area, they may need to wait for the 10-minute drop-off person to move their car before they can get onto the handicap ramp.
So this is the handicap spot, and here's the ramp to Matera.
Yeah.
And yeah, these are just placeholders, very conceptual at this point. The ramp is going to be somewhere between here and the parking spot, and it has to connect to the first terrace. We know the destination, we know the starting point. How we're going to get there, we're not sure. But this area is going to have a terrace that's for gardening, a 10-minute drop-off spot, a ramp, and an existing parking area. How they end up being drawn out and implemented in the field, I think that me and Ryan both said that if we have to make changes, this doesn't look exactly correct. I mean, I think I would have it in this area here, kind of in front of the ramp, so you could actually pull into it instead of, pull in the front of your car, and you could have your car kind of sideways. But those kind of changes are not needed for this type of plan. We'll fix this up a little bit and make some changes. We actually got this one on I think just today. Was it? I think it was just today. Yeah. So I just wanted you to see that we're thinking about the 10-minute drop-off spot, because it's really important for that to be on the plan to show you that we're thinking about, segregating the parking between the gardeners and people that may rent the cabin for functions. And that's the component that was needed. They would come in, drop off their supplies, be there for 10 minutes, and then go park over on Pearl Street and then walk back over. And I think we all did that when we were dealing with some of the trees up there in the upper meadow. And we understand how to get from Pearl Street to the upper meadow to the viewing platform and then back down to this parking lot.
Okay, so that leads right to my next comment is, I think it would be good, and maybe Chuck, you can coordinate this to see whether we can get DPW to put some parking stripes to designate the parking spaces over in the Pearl Street lot, so we know how many parking spaces are there and where people can park. So if that lot gets more heavily utilized, would you be willing to do that?
I will, and I actually brought up that same point today. And yeah, so just like Kathy said at the beginning of this, the way it is without the parking stripes down and the parking being lined, we're at the will of the first couple of people that pull in. But if we had them striped, we would know how many parking spots we could open and or have an offer to gardeners or whoever else wants to use it. And to me, that's between 5 and 7. Maybe if someone parked poorly, it's 3 cars. So that's what the problem is. I will let the DPW know that it came up at this meeting also. And maybe that's something that we can get done in the spring.
And just one other thought about putting lines down in parking lots, perhaps we can get the same thing they use for putting stripes on football fields and make temporary lime striping in the gravel parking lot at Matera to give people a hint of where to park and get them in the habit of parking in certain places. I don't know whether that's possible, but that might get things started off on the right note. I know it will wash away in the rain, but might be a place to start. Just a thought. And Joe has his hand up.
Yes, this was in response to your question about the drop-off spot and the cart ramps. From looking at the picture, it looks like there are 2 cart ramps. One of which doesn't. I don't really actually. It kind of goes into the woods.
Yes.
The other is the one that's actually that provides access to the garden, and the one that is blocked is the one that goes into the woods, and the one that is not blocked is the one that provides access to the garden. So I was not concerned about the drop-off spot blocking the access to the ramp to the garden for that reason. But I think Chuck's mouse cursor was moving around, and I wanted to make sure that my understanding was correct there about that the same cart path that has the water line under it would be the one that is used for accessing the garden, and the one that therefore needs to be graded for accessibility, right?
That's correct.
Yeah.
That's the one that DPW is grading. And I think, Martha, you were maybe commenting also on the fact that if somebody was parked in that drop-off space, it would be difficult for somebody to get from the handicap space past the car, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That was my concern. And I had been under the impression that the ramp would start further to the bottom edge of our screen right now and go kind of diagonally up the hill because of the boulders that are in the place where the water line's going to go. So when we were out there on our site visit, it looked like they were planning to make the handicap ramp kind of come more on the slant. But I think we don't need to go into those details tonight, particularly just as long as we are conscious of not having a conflict between the drop-off people and the wheelchair people.
It's a really good point, and I'm sure that DPWs will be figuring out exactly where they can get the ramps in place, given the boulders, seen and unseen.
Okay, well, we have not given anyone in the general public a chance to speak, so anyone from the general public, if you use the reactions and use the raise hand feature to raise your hand, this would be your chance to be called on and express any concerns you have. Seeing none, is there any last questions from conservation before we move forward?
No, I don't.
All right, and I'm going to suggest that we not close the hearing tonight, just in case anyone from the general public wants to comment, because we're on remote. But can I have a motion to continue to next week and continue to next 2 weeks from now, whatever, the next meeting?
Chuck, were you about to say something?
And
I
did
was.
Andrew have something?
I think I think the commission within the discussion would like an updated plan, would like to understand more about what we're actually voting on. I thought that was a great question. Maybe a little more discussion revolving around the parking and the usage, and the fence and the gate and those type of things. I'll send out emails tomorrow with my notes to Kathy and to the commission, and then by doing that, we probably will cover it all. So that's what I think why we'd like to push it to the next meeting and then have that information to discuss. And I think by then we would probably have a better draft of the gardeners agreement. We have a meeting tomorrow with town council, Gene Delios, some of the other staff that's been involved in this. And I'll get that to you also.
Okay, and Andrew, did you have a question?
Chuck, got you. No, I just want to be clear on what it is we're voting on. So when we talk about it next week, I don't want to be in the way of things. It seems like things are moving forward. So I just want to make sure we could do what they need to get done and move forward.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? All right.
May I express my thanks for the questions and the ideas that y'all have brought up. And I look forward to bringing this information back and seeing you in a couple of weeks.
Okay, thank you. So can I have a motion?
I was going to ask one very quick last question, although Kathy's smiling thanks makes me think I know the answer, which is that it sounds like continuing to the next meeting does not in any practical way hold up the progress on preparing for this garden, does it?
It doesn't, Joe. Ideally, we would hope to have it approved by mid-February so that we can do publicity with, from our side, we would do the publicity with the community then to say that it's available and this is what you need to do to apply. Certainly from DPW's perspective, there's a lot of work that needs to be done. Some of it, of course, isn't going to happen until the thaw, but we can go ahead and get all the detailed stuff together.
In that case, I'd like to move to continue the hearing on the Matera Community Garden to our next meeting on February 9th.
Second.
Okay, and in order that we did before, please vote.
Ryan Bro, I approve.
Andrew Driven, I approve.
John Sullivan in favor.
Joe Carnahan in favor.
Martha Moore in favor. Okay. Thank you all very much for coming.
See you February 9th.
Yep.
Thank you all.
All right, thank you.
Okay, our next agenda item is 61 Oakland Road. And I can read it while Chuck lets people in who are on that group. Continued public hearing on a request for determination of applicability filed by the town of Reading under the Massachusetts Wetland Protection Act, MGL Chapter 131, Section 40, and or the Reading Wetland Protection Bylaw, Section 7.1, for renovation of the existing high school Turf 1 synthetic turf field and running track in the same footprint of the existing facilities. Portion of the project renovation are within the buffer zone to a bordering vegetated wetland. The limit of work will not go beyond the existing track. Additional improvements include retrofit of existing sports lighting with new energy-efficient LED fixtures, new fencing, and landscape enhancements. All the work is within the 100-foot buffer zone. The application and plans can be viewed on the Conservation Division page under current project 48 Pasture Road, no, 61 Oakland Road. So I'm not sure that the assessor's map numbers are correct, but it says assessor's map 44, lot 12, RCC file number 20212-20. So there may be some errors there, but you can find it on the Conservation Division page.
Sure. Can everyone involved in this project raise their hand so I can let them in? I know only Stephen. Yeah, you're in. You have permissions to co-host, so you can use the screen. Is there anyone else? Timothy Powers, is that one of them?
Yep.
Stephen?
Yep.
Anyone? What about Dave Smith? No.
No, just Tim and I.
Okay, good. You're all set. You can use the screen, unmute yourselves.
All right. Thank you, Commission, for having us back. You have all received the updated plans and information as it pertains to our last meeting. So I'll just throw up kind of the updated rendering. I think we addressed everything that came up in terms of questions and for site prep and fencing removal, erosion control. We did reduce the size of the storage pad to get it out of the buffer. We provided additional planting and seeding information. I think that's about it. I'm gonna keep it short and open it up to questions or comments.
Okay. Any members of the Conservation Commission use the raise hand feature if you want to speak or ask questions? I don't see anyone with questions.
So I have a question.
Yeah.
If none of the commission have them, Martha, did you want to ask a question?
Andrew does have a hand up.
Oh, Andrew.
Okay. Shall we start with Andrew then?
All right, I mean, I don't have too many questions. My only thing is, and I'm sure the other folks that have been involved with this project have already delved into this, but this track and field was clearly built on a wetland. From my research, it's about 15 years old, which I mean, I'm not an expert in this, but it seems like they should last a little bit longer. And I'm wondering if it is because it is built on such a wet ground. So as you're redoing this, is the substructure, is there anything that can be done to the substructure to ensure that the next track and field could potentially last 20 to 30 years rather than just 15? It sounds like we're doing a very similar design, so I don't know what the rationale, if that's a budget thing or what's going on with that. But I know this has nothing to do with any of the changes, but that's just where I'm coming from, is trying to get a better understanding of what we're doing, why, and what are we doing the best thing possible given what we're dealing with.
And that's a good question. As far as the sub base and for the field and the track, we have not seen or heard of any issues in terms of settlement or anything like that. Yes, a track should last a little longer. The 15-year mark, I'm not 100% sure if that was just a resurfacing or the full renovation and build out, but the life expectancy is all dependent on maintenance and how it's being used, unfortunately. So if football players are walking across the track with their cleats, it's the surfacing that's getting destroyed. It's not anything to do with the base. And again, that's kind of where we see it, that it's really the surface condition that needs to be renovated, and nothing with the actual base. I don't know if that answers.
Just in terms of the history of this, it was a grass football field in this same location before they did the artificial turf, and the artificial turf is about 15 years old because that's when they redid the high school. They also put in the artificial turf field.
Yeah, so the turf at 15 years is beyond its life. It's the track. There was a track there, correct?
Yeah, there's always been a football field with a track around it since the 70s at least.
Yeah. So
in that location.
I think the track base is there and it's been there for a while and it's solid. And again, the turf field, there's been no drainage issues, nothing other than excessive wear. And at 15 years, I mean, a normal turf field lasts 10 to 12. So the town has gotten its use out of it. So yeah, I think.
And I do think at the last meeting, Nika had some questions about the lighting, and it was a little hard to tell which was the side of the lighting diagrams that were facing the wetland and which was facing the bleachers. And I think I read in the material you sent out that the brightest light was actually facing the bleacher side. and the stream side. Is that correct?
Correct. Let me pull that up.
Yeah, like this picture, you've got track stubs sticking out on
Yeah,
both
that's
sides.
not
Across.
Um,
And then another picture, the two track stubs are on the same side.
Yeah, so the way this is oriented, it's the opposite way of what our plan shows, just to be clear.
So in this image, the bleachers are at the top of the screen where the track stubs stick out.
Correct.
And
same-
the lighting poles are slightly further apart on the side near the bleachers and slightly closer together on the side near the stream.
Correct. And I'm not sure what file I'm in, but it looks like it's missing that larger zoom out of where that 0-foot candle is and where that kind of hump was. It's reflective of the poles being a little bit further apart, as well as security light fixtures on just the two poles towards the bleacher side for emergencies and for egress after a game.
All right. Is there anybody on the commission that has any more questions? Is there anyone in the general public that has questions? You could use the raise hand feature under the reactions button on your Zoom screen. Okay. Are there conditions that, oh, Chuck, are there conditions we want to put on this specifically on the permission to do this?
So you guys think about that. I'm going to ask my question. So on the side of away from the bleachers on Birch Meadow Drive, we were talking about the erosion control. Can you tell me how it was close to the bank and maybe digging in? What was that taken care of? Is that something we need to handle in the conditions? So you were going
I think
to.
we did include a requirement that the commission, you and any members, if you want to be on site when it happens and part of the pre-construction meeting, just to review that means and methods of doing that. But I believe the way we had left it was for the fencing along that side where it's being removed, to do it simultaneously, pulling out the fence and the small footings, and then having someone lay the erosion control by hand, rather than going and putting the erosion control on the outside of the fence. And then when they go to pull it out, it's just a mess.
So you're most likely going to have a condition in the order of conditions to notify us when that section is being worked on. Is that something that you feel you feel like can happen? And it's like 72 hours notice, which is just our work days, which is a four work day week. You'd be able to let me know. I've gotten calls on like a Friday saying, or Thursday night that, it's going to happen Friday. So we want it during the 4-day work week, and we'd like to see that. So if that's the case, then we can manage that through the conditions. That would be fine.
And
that was my concern.
And I also think in the memorandum that was dated January 19th, it says that they're not going to put a silt fence, but instead temporary snow construction fence along with the erosion control, so that they don't have to dig in the silt fence. Isn't that right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So Chuck, are there any other conditions you want us to put into this I'm just trying to, determination of applicability.
So we would want so some of this stuff is boilerplate and we don't usually go over it, Steve. So it's the commission, I only really ask them for conditions that are above and beyond what typically is boilerplate. But one of the conditions is we're going to want a pre-activity meeting. So, and then we're going to review the erosion control, and this is before you start, and it's before I sign off on the building permit. So just make sure that sequence is understood, because it's come up before where you want to start on Monday and I haven't seen the project yet. So erosion control can go in. You don't, you could put the erosion control in at any point. It just has to be there when I go to review the project. So that's one of the conditions.
Mhm.
Another condition is to 72 hours notice for the fencing along the Birch Meadow Drive side, and maybe the a little bit of the Imagination Station side, which is, I guess, Screen West. So any other questions or any other conditions that the commission has?
I have one point, and it's not a condition per se, but it's, could you guys send us a corrected plan with the right orientation so we could have it in the archives? So 15, 20 years from now, when this gets revisited, we don't have to remember that the plan was backwards.
Yeah.
Thank you.
What it's worth, I'm the new lighting plans that were sent out last week, I think, are unambiguous because they only have track stubs on one side and so forth. So I didn't have any trouble understanding those that were sent out.
Okay. So if there's nothing else, I'll entertain a motion to close this hearing.
Move to close the hearing on 61 Oakland Road.
I'll second that.
Before we
Okay.
vote, can I ask one more question?
Sure.
Stephen, when's the start date for this project?
Anticipated mid-April.
Okay, thank you. Now you can vote. Thank you.
Okay. Brian,
Brian Bowe in favor.
do
Andrew
your
Dribbin in
same order.
favor.
Okay.
Sorry, I was muted. Andrew Dribbin in favor.
John Sullivan in favor.
Joe Carnahan in favor.
Martha Moore in favor. Okay. Is there any other discussion that we need to have before we vote to approve? Hearing none, can I have a motion to approve?
Move that we issue a negative determination of applicability for 61 Oakland.
Second that.
Okay. Brian,
Brian Bowe in favor.
Andrew Dribbin in favor.
John Sullivan in favor.
Joe Carnahan in favor.
Martha Moore in favor. Okay. Our next,
Thank you, guys.
Yes,
On
thank
the-
you.
oh, thank you, yes. On the agenda, the next thing is 1310 Main Street. Are they coming tonight?
1310 Main Street is requested to continue to the first meeting in March, January, February, March.
Okay.
Yep.
So we'll continue that one till the meeting in March. How about, oh, and 0 Small Lane is continuing to February 9th. What about Lot A Main Street?
Lot A Main Street. So let me just give you a little bit of background. A discussion came up that it would be good to get at the last meeting, and then it was continued with the chair and vice chair about the vernal pools. So it was discussed that between the chair and vice chair and myself, that maybe we should ask our consultant to come back to field some of these vernal pool questions so we could help this move along. So I contacted the applicant and I said that we'd like to do that, and there might be some issues with the amount of money that was left in the consulting fee account, and they had agreed to pay any differences. And then then it was just a matter of setting up the time. So Tom from LEC will be coming to our February 9th meeting. And he would like to be on the agenda after 8 o'clock. He has a meeting before that. And he will be available to answer any questions for this project. And he set aside an hour for that. I believe that we don't actually have to ask for any additional money. I think that there's around $300 or a little less than $300 left in the account. And this would only be, according to the fee chart, something around $150. So that is taken care of, and it has been requested to move by the applicant to move or to continue this hearing because of those issues to the next meeting, which is February 9th.
Okay, so do we need to vote on whether to continue to February 9th?
Yes, you
Mark,
do.
If I ask a question beforehand,
Mhm.
Chuck, did you manage to connect with the circuit rider about the vernal pool habitat dimensions?
So the circuit rider was on vacation when I called. Well, I called first and I didn't get a return phone call. Then I checked in and I got the email that bounced back, and it just said that they're not going to be around until the 29th of this month. So
Okay.
no information there. I was kind of hoping that having Tom at the next meeting would help, but she'll also be back by then also. So we'll be able to contact her. I want you to know that that access point for inquiry at the DEP level is also available to commission members. And there's a helpline and there's a direct line, and you feel free to make those phone calls. But I'm happy to do it also.
Okay, thanks.
So did we need to vote on any of the other ones that I just skipped by, or are those fine as is?
Small Lane, you mentioned, we should vote on that. We should vote on 1310. Thank you.
Okay, I'll backtrack. I didn't realize we needed to vote on them. Okay, can I have a motion to continue 1310 Main Street to a future meeting?
That one is specifically, that was the one going to March?
March 9th. Yep.
Yes. All right. So yes, a motion to continue 1310 Main Street to our meeting on March 9th.
I'll
Second.
second that.
Okay, voting?
Ryan Bowe in favor.
Andrew Driven in favor.
John Sullivan in favor.
Joe Carnahan in favor.
Martha Moore in favor. Okay, can I have a motion about 0 Small Lane to February 9th?
Motion to continue the hearing on 0 Small Lane to our meeting on February 9th.
Seconded.
And voting?
Ryan Bowe in favor.
Andrew Driven in favor.
John Sullivan in favor.
Joe Carnahan in favor.
Martha Moore in favor. Okay, and how about a vote, motion on Lot A Main Street?
I don't have to have all the fun if someone else wants to make the motion. Okay, go ahead. I would like to move to continue the hearing on Lot A Main Street, next to 1261 Main Street, to our meeting on February 9th.
Second.
Andrew, you're up.
Okay, I hear a motion and a second by Brian Bowe. Can we have a vote?
Ryan Bowe in favor.
Andrew Driven in favor.
John Sullivan in favor.
Joe Carnahan in favor.
Martha Moore in favor. Okay. 56 Gray Coach Road has been requested to be continued to February 9th. And I wonder whether we can vote to take them off the agenda until we hear back, because we haven't really heard much in a while. Do you, Chuck, do you have any thoughts on that?
Sure. No, I haven't heard about 56 Great Croach Road. We wanted a plan, and we wanted the easement shown on the plan. And another question about that was, isn't the existing addition proposed or existing addition located on the easement? So there was some of the questions, and there was a follow-up with the engineering department about, structure on the easement. So I haven't heard from these people. I just want you to know that if you take them off the agenda, they have to advertise again, and send out a butter notification.
Okay, I see a hand from Jack Sullivan, so maybe he has some input on this question.
Yep,
Jack?
I just wanted to add, I just completed the survey plan for that applicant, and I just emailed the plan to them tonight. So my guess is they'll have something in this week to Chuck. So I would ask that you keep them on the agenda. The holdup was on my end. They were trying to get me to get the survey plan completed. I've been so busy, but I did finish it and I did send it tonight.
Ah, okay.
Well,
That's
glad we had it on the agenda to talk about. Yeah.
Okay, can I have a motion to continue 56 Gray Coach Road to February?
February 9th.
Make a
Moved.
motion to continue Gray Coach Lane to February 9th.
I'll second.
Okay, and voting.
Brian Bowe in favor.
Andrew Driven in favor.
John Sullivan in favor.
Joe Carnahan in favor.
Martha Moore in favor. Okay, 51 Sanborn Lane. A similar question about that one. We haven't heard anything back from them about their trees. I think we were waiting for them to give us a arborist's opinion. And have you heard anything back from them, Chuck?
I have not. They seem to they've told me twice that they hadn't been able to connect with an arborist to get this done. So, yeah, again, if you take them off the agenda when they're ready, they'll have to re-advertise and send out a butter notification.
And does that therefore incur more expenses because they have to send those notifications by mail?
Yes, it does. It incurs more expense, but again, they should be updating us. They should be updating me. I haven't heard from these people. I would suggest, if you have any trepidation about doing this, that you just instruct me to reach out to them and find out what they want to do. And if they're not at the next meeting, then we could think about taking them off the agenda and just, letting them know. It might be another, what's just happened with Jack Sullivan. They finally contacted someone and it's going to come in a meeting or two.
Any thoughts from members of the commission which option we want to go with?
I would agree with the idea of leaving them on for another meeting, given the assumption that maybe the holidays slowed things up, and vote to continue it and give them another shot. And I think it makes sense to ask Chuck to reach out to them, let them know the situation, let them know that they need to show some action or they'll be removed from the agenda.
Is that all right with everybody? Okay, so let's have a motion to continue 51 Sanborn Lane to our next meeting on February 9th.
So
I
moved.
moved.
Second.
I second.
Let's go with moved by John Sullivan, seconded by Joe Carnahan, and let's vote.
Brian Bowe in favor.
Andrew Driven in favor.
John Sullivan in favor.
Joe Carnahan in favor.
Martha Moore in favor. Okay, 16 Varney Circle. Are there people here representing 16 Varney Circle today?
Be Jack Sullivan.
Yep, Jack Sullivan's here. And I can make this, I just want to give the commission a brief overview. The owner has been working with attorney Bill Crowley. We're trying to figure out the best way to transfer some of the land on that property to the Conservation Commission. And I know I prepared a sketch plan for the owner, showing up an area that could be conveyed by fee or through some type of easement with a restricted covenant placed on it. And I think the owner's right now working with the attorney, and we'll have to work with Chuck and town council to see the best means to do that. But I just want to give you an update. We don't have a plan completed at this time. He still needs to talk to his attorney and his mortgage company.
Okay, and so are you requesting to continue until the first meeting in March? Or some meeting in February?
Let's try for the first meeting in February, February 9th.
Okay,
All right, February 9th's got a lot on its plate.
I tried.
Thank you.
Can we have a motion to continue the hearing on 16 Varney Circle?
I'll make a motion to continue 16 Varney Circle to February 9th.
Second.
All in favor?
Brian Bowe in
Well,
favor.
we have to roll call, so yeah.
Yeah.
Brian Bowe in favor.
Andrew Driven in favor.
John Sullivan in favor.
Joe Carnahan in favor.
Martha Moore in favor. Okay. Thank you very much, Jack, for letting us know about that. 93 Belmont Street is our last numbered agenda item hearing. Who's here about 93 Belmont Street?
Jack Sullivan and the homeowner, Chris White.
Okay. That must be just Chris, right?
Yes, how you guys doing? Last but not
Okay.
least.
Okay, and I think I need to read the official blurb, right? 93 Belmont Street, continue the public hearing for a notice of intent filed by Christopher White under the Massachusetts Wetland Protection Act, MGL Chapter 131, Section 40, and/or the Reading Wetland Protection Bylaw, Section 7.1, for constructing an addition and porch within the 200-foot riverfront area. The application and plans can be viewed during regular business hours at the Town Hall Conservation Office, 16 Lowell Street, Reading, Mass. 01867, and on the Conservation Division page under Current Projects, Assessors Map 34, Lot 136, DEP file number 270-0752. Okay,
You want me to kick it off, Chuck?
Why don't you, Jack?
Okay, thank you. For the record, Jack Sullivan, owner of the Sullivan Engineering Group. So when we last met with the commission, there were a number of items the commission wanted to see added to the plans. I was just going to go through some of the changes to the plan. Number one, we added a proposed soil stockpile area out at the front of the site. It's outside the 100-foot inner riparian buffer zone. Number two, and this was, Martha asked for this, there were 2 rhododendrons and 2 cedar trees on the southerly side of the property that were not shown on the plan, and they were asked to be shown. So I did locate those. They fall off the property. Those have been planted as part of a town project a number of years back, but we did show them graphically on the plan now. The commission mentioned that flag 5A seemed that it could be moved about 1 foot further up gradient, so that flag was adjusted to 1 foot. We did show a trench drain for the driveway area that fed right into the dry well, and there was no pre-treatment device previously, so I added a concrete drain manhole with a 2-foot sump prior to entry into the dry well, so any sort of silt or sand that gets into that trench drain will now be collected in the sump and prevent any cloggage from the dry well. The proposed driveway, the footprint is still the same, but there was discussions at the last meeting if the turnaround area on the southerly side of the driveway could be constructed with pavers. I talked with Chris White, who's the owner. He had no objection to this, so we're showing pavers to be used in that area. Another change, the plantings to the rear of the project within the 25-foot no disturb zone. Previously, I had them clumped by species, and I had them extending just from the grassed area to the edge of the 25-foot zone. Some of the members mentioned that there was black mulch along the bank area beyond the grass towards the brook. And they asked if I could mix and match the planting, so I did so. I item of discussion was there's a trampoline in the rear yard. Chuck showing the area now. That trampoline, I went and met with the homeowner. There had been a play structure there previously that they replaced with a trampoline in the same spot. There was also a question on that existing 5-foot aluminum fence in the backyard in the vicinity of flags 1A through 4A. And that aluminum fence, there had always been a fence in that location that he had replaced with the aluminum fence. And he's here tonight if you need to discuss that more. There was one of the, or two of the members mentioned out by flag 8A, there appeared to be some yard waste stockpiled in that area, like grass clippings or leaves. And when I talked to Chris, the abutter on that side, there was an elderly gentleman, he passed away. We think it was landscape clippings from his yard, but we made a note that we would clean it when conditions allow. Obviously, that would be the spring now. And the only other thing I want to mention, the area out where the trampoline is and with that yard, there had been some talks of trying to add plantings to that area. We feel the plantings we show are sufficient. The owner would like, that's the one area they use. He does have 2 small kids. They do use the trampoline. We don't view the trampoline as a structure, and he would like to continue to use that yard as he uses it today. That basically summarizes the changes, and I'll turn it over to the commission for any questions they might have.
Anybody on the commission want to ask any questions? Brian?
Okay. First of all, just, I guess, clarification. In Reading, a structure uses the dictionary definition, which is basically something built of multiple parts. So I think we would see that as a structure. Put that aside for the moment. So you have young kids, and you say that when they're done, you're probably going to remove it. So how young, in other words, how long are they going to be there? How long is this structure going to be there? And when you do remove it, are you definitely going to remove it? And are you going to take the stone underneath away once you remove it? That's 3 questions.
Yeah, good questions, Brian. Kids are probably about 3 to 4 years away from not wanting to bounce anymore. And I would take maybe your advice on what you think would be the best way once that's, to take away the stone and remove, whether it's back to what you think would be the best, appropriate, if it's grass or plantings or whatever it may be. But yeah, that would be the intent. It wouldn't be there for very long.
Okay, and as far as ways to get rid of it, I don't have any particular instructions. That's really not what we would do. It's in the middle of the lawn. You can make your own choice there from my perspective. My next question has to do, as you're facing the house, the left-hand side, so that would be the north. When we were there, I definitely remember that being shady. In addition, I went back to some Google Earth images and some of the GIS images on the town website, and there appears to be shade and trees there. Yeah, I don't see any trees on this plan. Actually, and I don't see the fence running between the 2 houses either. But my real question is about the retaining wall you're showing on your plan. What is that going to do to the trees that I think were there just based on the shade I remember?
I can let Chris answer that, but on that's an existing stone retaining wall on the northerly side of the house. That's not a proposed retaining wall.
Oh, that's, I don't remember. That's fine. I don't remember, but that's fine.
Yep, so I don't know about, if there was tree cover. I didn't locate trees on that side only because we're not proposing any work over there. I concentrated my survey work. I do show a portion of the fence out back on the abutters land, but I didn't really concentrate my work over there because I knew the addition was going on the right-hand side and there were no impervious surfaces over there. So as far as riverfront, I didn't get into too much of a detailed survey over there, but it is an existing retaining wall on that side and wrapping around the front.
Okay, I didn't realize it was existing, but that's good to know. My last question has to do with the removal of the yard waste. I agree that you probably want to do it in the springtime, you being Chris, the owner. But can you arrange to let Chuck know when you've done it? Just in case we want to come do a look see.
Sure, happy to. I mean, I don't know exactly, how much was there or what was seen specifically, but I know my landscaper takes everything with. So I would admit that's why, kind of made me think it must be right on the line of the neighbor, and my son was cutting his lawn when he passed. So I'm assuming he didn't do a great job picking it up.
Oh, that's fine. I just would like to see, what the end result is, how clear
Yeah.
it is. And
Absolutely.
yeah. Okay, that's great. And that's all I have for questions. Thank you.
Anybody else from the commission have any questions? Andrew.
I guess my one question for now was something that came up at the previous meeting about the driveway when it was built, and was it built with under a permit? So is there any further clarification about when that driveway was constructed? Does the owner know?
I mean, I've never done anything to it. It's been that way since I bought it in 05 or, so I think the house was built in 2000. So as far as I know and can remember, I mean, it has been the same since I've ever seen it.
Okay, so we'd have to, go ahead, Chuck.
I looked into the building packet, and the old plans, they actually just showed the house. They didn't show a driveway. So, to what I thought was, that was the original driveway, and it's been there all along. So basically where it says 2-story wooden frame structure, that's what I saw on the original plans. It didn't show any driveway or any access. It was very vague. It was a regular set of plans. It wasn't a Jack Sullivan plan. But, so we have to assume there was a driveway, there was steps, there's a lot of things missing from that plan.
Is that what you sent us a couple weeks ago? Because I looked through that and I couldn't make heads or tails of what I was looking at, really.
Yeah, that's all they had.
Okay.
Okay. Well, and I do have some other questions. I'm just looking at some historical imagery of the aerial. I mean, you're in the riverfront zone. You've owned the home for over 10 years, and it looks like some trees have been removed in the past 10 years that were most likely within the 25 and 35-foot limit. I'm gauging this from aerial photos, so we don't have any evidence of that. I mean, I don't know, maybe it was done properly with going through the Conservation Commission. I certainly wasn't around. But has there been any trees removed, and how have they gone through the Conservation Commission in the past?
This is my first experience with it, but we had one pine that broke and came down a while ago. Town took down some trees when they put in that easement. It was a fairly substantial path that they made to go through to Libby Ave. They put a couple of them back, but other than that, to my knowledge.
Okay, I mean, they're clearly in your yard from the aerial photograph. This is neither here nor there. It's just showing your approach to the land that is behind you that is within the riverfront zone, and how you've been caring for it. So no, I don't have any further questions.
Anybody else from the commission have any comments? Joe?
So like everybody else, I've been having fun with the town GIS and the pictures and so forth. I actually don't see any trees removed in the time, although actually there might be a couple in the back corner, but that's definitely in the sewer easement area. So that's probably what Chris was referring to there. A whole lot of trees came down on this property between 1998 and 2008. I'm guessing that's probably before the house was bought. But in any case, it was a long time ago. So I was able to confirm. I mean, I wish there was more buffer next to the river around flags, 1A to 4A. But on the other hand, I have to agree that that's been the condition there for since at least 2008 and some fraction of the 10 years before that. So so given that was sort of my main concern of all of these, I don't have any other further questions.
Okay. And I think we haven't heard from John. John, did you have any thoughts or questions?
I don't think I have any additional questions at this time.
All right, I had a couple. From where the rhododendron is shown, that's right up against the pavers of the driveway. I'm wondering whether there's going to be any way of protecting that rhododendron from damage when you're putting in the pavers. Are you really planning to put the pavers right up under the branches of the rhododendron?
Definitely want to keep the roadie. So maybe that's just the way Jack's drawing is pretty close, but we've cut it back a couple of times and it just keeps coming back, both of them. So they're healthy and happy. And so I think that's our plan, is to keep it and make sure we give it enough space so you're not scratching the cars.
Yeah, okay. And the other trees look like they're located not in conflict with the driveway extension, so they should be fine. And I guess I just want to reinforce the concept of protecting the bank of the river, and I like Jack's new planting design to try to do that, to give as much natural vegetation along the bank of the river as possible and keep the water runoff from the rain going across the yard from dragging erosion material into the river. When we were there, we saw some places where there was mulch among the shrubberies near the top of the bank that was getting eroded down into the stream. So just a comment to try to encourage you to allow that back edge of the property to be a natural riverfront area and not a landscaped dyed black mulch location. And even if you're not putting more plantings in along 1A through 4A, trying to maintain that sense of natural vegetation outside the fence would be a good idea, would be healthier for the river. All right, that's my only comments. Are there any members of the public that would like to comment on this project? Please use the raise hand function in the reactions button. Okay, I don't see any, and I don't see anybody vigorously waving their hand in the little Zoom windows. So, and I would say, as far as the trampoline goes, it's fine with me if you keep it there as long as you're using it, and then put some kind of vegetation, lawn or other plantings in that area when you take up the trampoline. That sounds like a plan to me.
So
And,
Andrew has his hand up, and then I wanted to speak.
okay, Andrew.
Oh, Chuck, you go first. I want to hear what you have to say.
Sure. I was going to ask the homeowner, Chris or Jack, if you could help with this discussion. If it would be possible to swap out some of that planting for a tree, a more substantial, kind of like a more habitat. Did notice that there were no trees. Is that something that could fit? From the aerial photo, it looks like your yard could use a tree or two, but certainly one would be nice. Is that something that you would consider? Some substantial, I forgot the term that Brian used, high value habitat tree, which is, red maple or oak, something like that. Would you consider something, replacing one of those shrubs with a tree? That's my question.
Sure. Yeah, definitely, Chuck. I mean, I'm pro tree, so as far as picking which one and how substantial and all that, but absolutely, we can add a tree versus shrub or both.
Yeah, I think if you could squeeze it in by the 5-foot aluminum fence, that would be great. You probably wouldn't have to worry about it for the first 15 years. Then it would probably do a little more shading, but if not, anything would be great. And along the back, I think it would all add to that riverfront area.
And you can get a list off of the conservation website of native trees that we would prefer that people plant.
Yeah, except for my request is specifically, one of the taller, high-value trees. We're actually going to update that list, a suggestion of Brian's, to have some high-value habitat trees on it.
Yeah. So you were saying a maple or an oak, but specifically we're looking for a native maple or a native oak rather than some hybrid nursery kind of tree, right?
That's right.
Yeah. Okay.
That's all I had.
All right, Andrew, what did you need to say?
I just have some reservations about this project in general. And then I'm still figuring out things, so pardon me if I'm reaching beyond what I should be, but this is we're assuming the damage has already been done by the driveway. So there's no new damage per se in the riverfront zone. I mean, we're clearly in a riverfront zone. I didn't realize this building's only 20 years old. I'm surprised. I'm just shocked that it was allowed to be built 20 years ago, and now we're potentially allowing such a large expansion within the riverfront. So are we saying that building a new foundation and a 2-story home on top of this driveway does not do any further damage to the landscape?
So in the
go ahead, Chuck.
Finish your question. I was going to let you know that in the Wetlands Protection Act in 310 CMR 10.55, which is redevelopment, you will see that this qualifies for redevelopment because it's impervious surface, it's lawn and all that. And they need to make an improvement over the there's criteria, which I don't think we've went into tonight, but it seems to me that they've met the criteria. They have to make an improvement over the existing conditions to the quality and value that that represents the riverfront, and they've done that with their shrubs. And the other condition is they cannot bring their project any closer than the existing degraded conditions. So, but they would like to have all of the project relocated to the outer areas of the riverfront. So the way that they've placed the addition over the existing pavement is allowed.
Okay,
and then all the rest of the structures are kind of in the front and towards the outer riverfront. The only thing that they added was that I'm trying to concrete drain. Is that what it says? Is this something there? A square box in the back, so whatever that is.
It's the proposed cantilevered balcony.
Yeah, that's the only thing that they added that extends into the riverfront.
We
And
got rid of
you,
that. We got rid
and
of
you
that.
can go
now.
back and forth on that.
That
Oh, you got
balcony.
rid of that.
Yeah, so it's not even going any further at all.
I was going to say, and you could just go back and forth on that because it's cantilevered over the ground. So, that's what I see. And so when a property, I think the way the Wetlands Protection Act works and what DEP wants is these areas, and obviously this isn't a dump site or something like that, but it is considered degraded. They want an improvement. That's the thing, because before the Riverfront Act, this kind of stuff was allowed, and that's like 86, 87. This kind of stuff was allowed, and also, a buildable piece of land. There's is it pressure? But you can find areas in the Wetlands Protection Act under the wetland and under the riverfront that allows a reasonable size house with a reasonable size yard with a septic system and driveway to exist no matter where it goes. And we use that, or the applicant used that over on Arcadia Ave to have that one in the I think it was the first 100 foot of the riverfront on a lot that was all wooded, which is different from this. This is lawn. So I think that you could get into the weeds and ask for some stuff, but we did get a lot, and they met some of those values. If you want, we could take a minute and go through each one and find out if they qualify. I do think that they will at the end of the day come up and have met all those standards that are in 310, 585.
yeah, I'm
And
sorry.
Chuck- oh,
I should be more familiar with them than I am, so I don't want to bog us down with that. But it just seems shocking. I mean, if you look at the buildable area of your lot, not the area that goes back beyond the 25 foot, you're building on almost 50% of the buildable area, which is crazy. And I don't know, I think it's a little sad, to be honest, but if it's fair game, then so be it.
And I just wanted to add one thing, Andrew, just for your knowledge. And this lot was created in 1967. So the way DEP with riverfront standards, you look at when the lot was created, and if it predates the adoption of the riverfront policy by DEP. So this lot was created in 1967. I'm actually surprised if the house was built in 2000, or if there had been another house there and they added on, or maybe it did get built then. I don't have that information. That was, I was a little surprised based on when this lot was created that a house was built so many years later. But it's defined by the creation of the lot, not the creation of the house when you look at the riverfront. So I just wanted to add that to the rest of the summary Chuck gave is right on. We have plantings, we added drainage. There's no trees to be removed. If this was all a wooded riverfront area and it wasn't previously paved, yeah, then there'd be a lot more questions on this lot. But where it's already had been previously disturbed and we're looking to build back in those disturbed areas, it is allowed.
Yep. Okay.
All right. Did I ask for anybody from the general public? If anybody from the general public has anything to say, this is your chance. Okay. Chuck, do you think we can close on this hearing this week?
So I would ask the commission if you could, if someone had a motion, and we'll find out what it is. So my sense is that there doesn't seem to be any other questions. So it's appropriate to close and find out if we can issue.
Anybody want to make a motion?
I'll move to close the hearing on 93 Belmont.
Seconded.
And can we have a vote?
Brian Bowe in favor.
Andrew Driven in favor.
John Sullivan in favor.
Joe Carnahan in favor.
Martha Moore in favor. And what conditions do we need to put other than the standard ones on this order of conditions? I think we've talked about the trampoline and adding a tree. Are there any other things people mentioned that we want to make sure Chuck gets in the order of condition?
Do you want me to write it first and then issue it at the next meeting? I don't have this written. So you could do something like that if, and then, so by closing, we're not taking any more information from applicants or the public, but the commission can still discuss this amongst themselves and look into the riverfront and find some conditions, and then we can talk about conditions and add them to the 99% completed order of conditions at the next meeting, which I will share with the applicant and Jack. And then we can issue it on that date. That's an option, or you could do it tonight and then you'll never see it, and I'll just send it to the applicant and Jack Sullivan for his record.
I'd
All right,
prefer to
so-
see them next week if possible, so I make a motion to have you work on the orders of conditions and present them at the next meeting. I don't know if I said that properly, but.
Sure.
Do we even need to vote on that, or can we just?
No,
say-
you just, it's a request. The only other vote that's required here is a motion to issue, which will be at the next meeting.
Joe, you had your hand up. Did you need to say anything?
I just wanted to make sure that the final draft of whatever documents you end up with here shows that the balcony was removed, because that does, in my mind, simplify the matter somewhat. So I'd like to see that captured, and then we're not surprised when someone is trying to close out these conditions in a year or two and there is or isn't a balcony.
Okay, so it sounds like we should vote to continue, because then Chuck will come back at the next meeting to present the orders of conditions, and we'll vote on the issuing those conditions next time, correct?
Yes.
Okay, can I have a motion?
I'll make a motion to continue 93 Belmont till February 9th.
Seconded.
Brian Bowe in favor.
Andrew Driven in favor.
John Sullivan in favor.
Joe Carnahan in favor.
Martha Moore in favor. Thank you very much, Chris and Jack.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to old new business. Chuck, was there some information about Camp Curtis Guild you need to share with us?
Yeah, I wrote the order of conditions and I sent it out to the commission. If you have any comments, you can just send them to me tomorrow but I did include everything that we talked about. I did reach out to two communities, North Reading and Lenfield, and I reviewed Lenfield's order of condition and made ours very similar to theirs, but they only had two conditions, and we have about 9. So and our conditions are I just wanted to make sure that we were notified when we were supposed to, and we give proper notice. And then they had a condition about having updates, and then we have a standard condition about updates. So I put that in too, and that's updates on how the invasive removal is going. But you all have it, and you can look at that. And if there was something missed, just get it to me. I told Matt Byrne over at VSC that I would send it off officially tomorrow.
Okay. And can you take down the 93 Belmont Street map? That's still screen sharing.
Okay.
All right, thank you. So do we have anybody here in the audience that's here for any of these particular old new businesses?
Well, the first one is 25 Baker, and I think Brian would be very helpful with this. But is 25 Baker here?
Yes,
And that's Joanne, right?
it is.
Okay, I'm
for
gonna
coming.
give you permissions here, and
And
you're all set. And then
Joanne,
maybe
thank you for
Brian.
your patience with this long meeting, and I appreciate you sticking with us till after 9 o'clock.
I've learned a lot. I should come more often. So thank you for the letter. I think we were thinking we were doing a good thing by composting, and instead we were infringing on the wetlands in the back of our property. And the reason that I wanted to come is because we're fine with trying to remove that pile of compost, but I wanted to find out what the options were because it is considerable.
So should I, want me to go with?
Sure.
I do, yeah.
Okay, so, so a couple of things. The first, we'll leave the compost pile till later. The first are the cinder blocks and what have you,
Sure,
the
yeah.
more concrete debris. Now, my understanding, feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding is that those were actually there from the previous occupant, and the removal of them was in the purchase and sales even, but you were aware that those had to be removed. So obviously it's an issue that they haven't been removed. Not only that, that wouldn't even have become apparent if we hadn't happened to have a project happening next door. So that's the first concern I have, is the fact that that condition has existed for a while. I'm not sure how long you've owned the property, but for a while, and it's still in place. So that's point number one. The second point is the compost pile. I think generally conservation commissions are in favor of composting. The magic is always in the how and the details. And in this case, it's a fairly large pile. It is right next to the resources itself. And it's comprised of everything from the flooring for the chicken coop that you have up near the house. Eggshells were in there, but basically everything. And those things are particularly bad for the wetlands as far as release of nutrients and what have you that can cause problems in the water. So having said that, it's clearly urgent to get your property back in compliance with state regulations, with the town bylaws. You could argue that the winter time might be a better time because things are frozen and you may cause less damage to the area around it. I personally don't think that's very practical. So it seems like you need to commit to taking care of that pile in the spring. And from my perspective, I would like to see us agree to a date by which you would have it removed, and then we could come in and see how things are going, if that makes sense. Having said that, before this becomes some magic final word, obviously I'd love to hear from the commission members as well as yourself. So back to you, Joanne, if you want to discuss this.
Yeah, absolutely. So you are correct. We did have in the purchase and sale for the prior owner to remove the debris. and the cinder blocks, and they did not, and we didn't have a recourse for that. There was a number of challenges with the closing. And so we're happy to take that on. I had already contacted Chuck and let him know that we would do that as of June 1st. The thought was that we would try to deal with the compost in the same time frames, and it was more just a matter of understanding from the commission if there's alternatives or if there's specific ways that you would prefer for that to be managed.
Okay, so I would like to draw on Chuck's experience here. Chuck, in the past, do you have any suggestions for a way to do this? Mostly with the perspective of getting the wetlands, the Board of Vegetation back to where it's supposed to be. Obviously, we should be concerned about costs, but more importantly, we should be concentrating on remedying the situation.
Yeah, so most likely the compost area has decomposed, and it may be very hard to determine where that fill stops. And so so you're left with two things, the elevations that are out there, and you can visually do that. Or when it's new composting, there's always a leaf litter layer that's buried, and we say to look for that. This is typically, this operation typically happens with experienced supervision. So we would ask for a wetland scientist to be on board, or for me to be around when this could happen. I mean, for your particular site, I was hoping you could take advantage of your neighbor's construction activity and work something out with them to just come over there, reach in and grab some of that material and pull it out of the way, but to, take it off site when the ground is frozen. I mean, that's what I thought would be the best thing. I mean, you have this opportunity with that construction going on, but it's up to you to kind of make the arrangements with the property owner that has, I don't know what that's called, a front end loader or something on site. Brian, did that answer your question?
Yeah.
With supervision, but most likely what's there has kind of all turned into mush, kind of right at that transitional point.
So I don't have anything to add to that. Then I do agree from my reading, what have you, that you do want to try and find a grade that matches the grade in the area. Other than that, I like the idea of trying to piggyback on the work next door at 16 Baker. But that's pretty much up to you folks, the homeowners.
I'm just going to chip in one more thing. I think it sounds like we're saying you don't necessarily have to get all the compost removed until spring because of the conditions out there. But in the meantime, certainly not adding to that pile would be an important function. And your options other than that would be the town compost area off of Stroud Ave, or signing up for the curbside compost pickup through Black Earth, which you can get a free container from DPW to start on. Good for you.
Yeah, I'm into it. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah. So, all right. So that solves that problem.
I do one thing I'd like to add. First of all, Joanne, I do appreciate you coming in. I appreciate your willingness to deal with this. It's not my intent, it's not our intent to be punitive. I don't know whether you didn't know. You started by saying you thought you were doing a good thing. I accept that. So at this point, it's lesson learned. We can move forward, and I'm glad to have you on board. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Brian. Appreciate that. Thanks for your support, folks. So Chuck, I can respond to the mail again to say that we'll do that by June 1st. And I'd love to be able to obtain the information for the neighbor in order to see if we can piggyback.
Sure. If you could just send me an email with that request in the morning and be able to reply.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Joanne.
Thanks, Nathan.
And I don't think we need a vote of any kind, do we?
No, we don't.
Okay, all right. So what else do we have in old and new business that there's somebody waiting to be dealing with that? We have Dave Smith, Chris Holton, Edward Sartell, any of them?
So next
here?
on the agenda
Sure.
is 22 Oak Street, which is this is the agenda that was sent out this afternoon. So
Oh,
the latest updated. So 22 Oak Street is on my agenda as the next item, and then the 3 Bond Street ones.
okay. And is that Ed Sartell who's got his hand up? Is that is that Oak Street?
That's Ed Fartell.
Okay.
Yeah. He
All
had
right.
called this afternoon. I'm going to give him permissions to speak. Okay, Ed. You can unmute yourself and turn your video on if you'd like.
Good evening, everyone.
Good
Welcome.
evening.
Sorry about the stark contrast background. I can't figure out how to get that off.
It's kind of a nice Conservation Commission background with a nice water body there behind you.
Different state.
Okay. All right. So I must be on the wrong agenda. I apologize. Can we find out what's going on Oak Street, please?
Oak Ridge.
Oak Ridge. Okay.
Yeah. So Brian, want to take this on?
Sure. This has to do with another letter that we sent out a while ago. There was a neighbor who had called Chuck to let him know that there was some yard waste being deposited behind the property in question. We do have an aerial picture of it that shows. You can see where the waste is, and actually it's on 2 sides of the property. It's over a fence, and it's actually on somebody else's property. It's not on the Oak Ridge property itself per se. So the letter asked Ed to come so we could talk about this, to voluntarily arrive at some accommodation, some way to remove that waste, first of all, and then second of all, to ensure that the situation doesn't happen again. So first of all, remove it to get the property behind his house back in compliance, and talk to the landscapers or whoever it is who is chucking it over the fence so we don't have that problem again. So Ed, is that a fair summation of the situation from where you see it?
Well, first of all, I don't understand what fence this is. There's no fence. So I have an abutter at 20 Oak Ridge Road that has allowed me to drop some branches and occasional some leaves. I have a landscaper that does my yard, takes the majority of the waste away. Recently what I do in the fall after Halloween or Thanksgiving, really, I have some hay bales that I break apart and put on that edge. They slide down the embankment that's there. I actually put pumpkins out there too for, whatever, squirrels or deer to chew on. And they have a tendency to roll down that hill. But it's actually my neighbor's property, which is 20 Oak Ridge Road. So if I can indicate, the area I'm talking about is right here. There's right in the corner. There is no fence here. It's just open. This is a fairly new neighbor, young couple that moved in about a year ago. I've had conversations with him, and he says he doesn't have a problem with doing that. I don't know why Mr. Carbone is upset about that. I have talked to him about it in the past. I didn't understand it then. Still don't understand it now. To be honest with you, I don't think anyone in my area, which is Oak Street, Oak Ridge, Indian Tree, and Redgate Lane, fully understands where the jurisdictional wetland begins or ends. In other words, where is the flora? I have no idea. So we're talking about, I'm sorry, I'm trying to look at this is my property here, which is 1043, if that's correct? Yeah, 1043. So if you can go back to that topo view, it would be great. The aerial photograph.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so the area that we're talking about is right here. There is no fence in this area. Were you up there recently when this past fall?
No, I was looking at the aerial view. I didn't actually visit your property.
All right. So this past fall, what I did was between the neighbor and myself in the tree line on my property, I installed like a windscreen similar to what you have on a construction site, but green in color, to keep the leaves from blowing from the woods across my property all the time. That's removable. Matter of fact, my wife hates it. It's got to come out. She hates it. Yeah, I just put up, that's the first time I put it up this year. So I don't quite fully understand where I'm putting leaves or branches.
So
at
let me suggest this.
Yeah.
I hear what you're saying. Would you give me permission to visit your property, to look at the back, and to kind of reinforce my view of what I saw in an aerial photo? Would that be amenable to you?
Yeah, I do not have a problem with that.
Okay.
So if you wind up telling me that this little, it's an embankment, it's a big drop off right there.
Uh-huh.
Do you tell me that I cannot put that on my neighbor's property? Which I don't understand. If you tell me it's too close to the floor of that area, which I don't know where that begins or ends. I mean, do you guys normally go out and identify that area of something this size? I mean, because I've been in other areas in other towns where they actually have signage placed along a certain area stating that this is a wetland, et cetera, no trespass or no dumping or no modifying, no manipulating that particular area.
So no, in general, I don't believe we do have signage around wetland areas, around resources. We have discussed it just recently, in fact, because of the dumping we've seen in a lot of areas, but we don't have it currently. As far as not understanding where the wetlands are, this view we're looking at right now is available on the town website, the GIS tool. And so you can certainly see and do the measuring lines that Chuck's been doing to have your own sense of where the wetlands are currently marked to be. Beyond that, you could always get an environmental company to come out and do a marking of the delineation if you wanted to do that. Chuck, you raising your hand and I'm still talking.
I didn't mean to. So
Okay.
is it? Yeah.
That's fine. I thought I saw you waving to me.
Oh,
So,
no, that was me. But I did want to chime in a little bit.
Right.
So I think it's great to look at the site and just to find out what's going on. But this is a jurisdictional wetland and it has a stream. So usually what you would do is from the aerial photo, measure out 100 feet. That's typically not correct. It can be off between 5 and 50 feet. So when we go out there, you know, we're just going to assume that corner of your yard by the shed is within the 100-foot buffer zone. And if you're dumping into number 20, you know, I mean, that's new. That's within, you know, that's within the 100-foot buffer zone. But if it's on someone else's property and he's allowing you to dump yard waste out there, I'm not sure why he would do that, because when number 20 Oak Ridge Road does a project, we are going to ask him to remove all of it. So, and it's all, like you said, yours. So I'm not sure why that would happen. But if that's the case and it's not actually like altering BVW, it's something the commission was going to have to discuss. I think that what I saw in the photo, which I was looking for, but I don't have, so if any other commissioner has it, they could put that up. It shows a steep embankment after your the edge of your property, and I saw that the hay was, you know, scattered down the hill. So, you know, again, that's yard waste. That's within the 100-foot buffer zone. As it goes down the hill, it's even closer. It's even deeper into the so I mean, I think that's what I have to say, but more would come out from the site visit.
So if I can understand this clearly. So this jurisdiction is 100 feet out from this area, correct? From the wetland
Yes.
area, there's 100
Yeah,
foot.
from the resource area.
Okay. So that being said, for some reason, I was under the impression that this is your jurisdiction boundary, but is there a distance from the actual vegetation of that wetland to, let's say, my property that would be permissible to do what I'm doing or did do or whatever at one point in time? I'm trying to figure out that 100 feet that you're talking about. I understand that that's a distance of your jurisdiction, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So what's the distance that is permissible to, let's say, put some leaves or pumpkins or whatever, or the bales of hay close to the vegetation? Is there a distance?
So within the buffer zone, the Conservation Commission can make a determination
All right.
that what is happening will harm or alter the resource area. And that's
Okay.
why the site visit's needed. Now, where you're at, that may not happen. You're way up a hill, you're on your own property. It may be flat right there. And if you can contain that yard waste and it doesn't blow in, and so, you know, is 1 leaf fill, is 5 leaves fill? I mean, not sure any of that is fill, but over time, filling is a problem. So that's the determination, and that's the value that the commission puts on it and the process that they take to understand what's happening. So the site, we're back to the site visit again.
Okay. I can understand that. I mean, I have a landscaper. He takes all the stuff away anyways. It's just the occasional whatever. It's the same reason that this area here, where we have this, I put up this windscreen this past fall. I mean, those leaves are blowing straight out of the woods. They're blowing across my lawn. I just have the landscaper done. So I just blow them back over into that's roughly the same area.
Okay, so Ed, if I could jump back in. So we're talking about a potential site visit. I think it would be helpful if we could coordinate a time such that you could be there. I don't know what your schedule is or anything else, but that way we can not only get a look at it for ourselves, we could have a conversation with you about some of these assumptions or what have you that you have, if only getting on the same page, educational point of view. So that might be helpful if you could find a way to do that.
Sure. So I'm pretty flexible. I'm in and out of the office all day long.
Okay, so do you want to, Chuck, do you want to take on the role of coordinating with Ed on a time that we could meet him out there to have this conversation?
Yeah, unless we can figure out a time right now.
Okay.
Well,
And so we're talking next week.
Yeah, you're going to get, it appears to be this snowstorm that they're talking about now is ranging anywhere from 8 to 12. I saw 14 to 23. You know, it's going back and forth.
Yeah.
So how about Monday, April 21st?
It's going to snow Saturday. Do you want to come Friday?
Chuck's town hall's closed on Friday, so we don't get Chuck on Fridays. It's a shame.
I gotta work.
Fridays always work best. Yeah, me too. And it's the day I usually don't have meetings, so it's the day I wish we could do site visits, but don't.
Okay, it's whatever you want. I mean, listen, if you say to me, you know, you got to get this, what are these leaves or whatever it was left of the Bay Hills, I have no problem with having my landscape contractor come in and pull them out of there. It is what it is. I mean,
Why don't we start with that, and you contact us when they're out, and we'll review it, because that's probably spring anyways, and we won't have to worry about this storm.
Okay, so now that Mr. Carbone has said his piece, I have a few questions for you guys. Because again, I know nothing about conservation. So, is it permissible to cut and fell trees in the area of a wetland, whether they're on your property or not?
It depends on what you means by in the area of.
15 feet from a stream.
Not without conservation review / approval.
Okay, can you build a structure over a stream?
And in fact, on the Reading conservation pages, there's a tree policy that talks more explicitly about how to handle that and what the process would be and what have you. So that's always worth reading, especially late at night when you're trying to get to sleep.
First of all, it's way past my bedtime. 4 a.m., actually 3:30 comes real fast.
Well, then I appreciate you staying with us this long.
I'm a little bleary-eyed, but could I do a screen share?
Sure. Let me stop this.
Instead of talking about this would be easier. Where'd everybody go?
We're off to the side, possibly.
Okay, yep, we're seeing your screen.
Okay. All right, so this happens to be 62 Oak Street. And this is something that listen, it's none of my business, but you know, if someone's gonna call me out for something, then it's gonna be tit for tat. This is a stream area that runs through 62 Oak Street. There's a structure built across it. There's all kinds of rocks placed on the shoreline to keep it from eroding, to maintain it. It appears some type of damming right here. There's a definitely dam here to create some type of pool for whatever use that is. I have a different photograph here where on the same property, you can see that dam a little bit better. One second, please. And this is yard waste being dumped also against that stream from the same property. Logs, there's a felled tree here on the left. This is the actual overview of the property. These are a little out of order, I apologize. So again, this is the stream that runs through. I think the stream originates from a road, goes under Pine Ridge, goes underneath Oak Ridge, comes back out, heads on down by Joshua Eaton.
So Ed, with the hope of moving this along, so you're basically saying that this
Well-
property has some issues as far as your understanding of the WPA and what have you. Is that correct?
What I'm trying to say is people who live in glass houses shouldn't throw stones.
I understand that was just saying, as soon as you said
Okay.
tit for tat, that came across.
Right. So there's a cut tree right here. I mean, come on. We're talking about, I got a couple leaves and a pumpkin and a bale of hay, a couple bales of hay.
All right, so we understand your point.
Okay.
For this conversation, it's about your property and what have you.
I understand.
I'm sure Chuck has written down that address that we can look into it, but for this conversation, let's constrain ourselves to dealing with your space on Oak Ridge.
I agree. Okay.
Okay, that's good.
Other than that, I'm all set. So, yeah, Chuck, whenever you're available.
So in my mind, what's going to happen is spring's coming. You'll do your initial cleanup, and I'll put a note in my calendar to, based on what I think is going to happen, I'll contact you. You're around town enough. I see you at town hall, so I'm not worried about contacting you.
Right.
And if it hasn't happened yet, then you'll just tell me when that initial spring cleanup's going to happen and those leaves are going to be removed. I'd like to review it after that happens, and I'll ask Brian if he's available.
Yeah, I mean, so by some chance, if the snowstorm dissipates and my landscape contractor is available, what I will do is I will take pictures before and after. If you want to do that, or do you want to see it first before I clean it?
No, you can go ahead and clean it.
Yeah.
That's fine. That's what this
Yep.
is all about. And then we'll just review. I would err on the side of more is better. So don't tell that guy that we're looking for to get down to the original amount of leaf litter. And that's what the site visit was needed, but you can certainly have him go out there and look and take out what he thinks is yard waste.
How do I determine that?
So oddly enough, there's usually about 2 inches of leaf litter each year. The decomposition rate keeps up with about that. So I would measure it around 2 to 4 inches. Anything above that would be considered yard waste unless it's turned into soil. And then this commission doesn't have a policy of asking you to remove soil. But again, we're back to like a yard inspection to see. If it had been done for a while, I mean, you could be looking at a lot of material that needs to come out of there. But again, I didn't check it out. I saw a picture. I think my hope is that we've stopped this from happening in the future, and we see that your landscaper has taken out what you guys consider yard waste, and we're going to just discuss it at that point. And maybe that's enough, with the fact that you're not going to do any dumping anymore.
Yeah, I mean,
And from my perspective, I apologize for mischaracterizing up front about over the fence. I also was looking at a picture and that's what I thought it was. But in the end, if we can get this back to the original state, that is the whole goal.
yeah, I mean, this area has been like this for, oh God, I can't tell you. I've been there 25 years. The house was previously owned by my in-laws. and they were there since 1969.
So it's their fault, you're saying?
Oh, I'm not saying that. My wife will kill me.
A wise man, a wise man.
She's probably watching right now. So, but again, you know, it's this whole area back has been like this for quite some time.
Okay, so let's get it cleaned up then. It's time.
Yeah, we'll see. I'm going to see what it is. I mean, I'll try to, if it doesn't snow, I'll go down and poke around. It is pretty solid. I can tell you that. So,
All right.
We'll see what the landscaper says.
Sounds
All right,
good.
Ed, thank you.
Thanks.
Okay.
Thank you very much. And thanks for letting us know about 62 Oak Street.
Well, I think fair is fair.
Yeah.
Thank you. Have a good
Yep.
night.
I know.
Thanks.
Okay, now it's Bond Street. So
And who's
let's,
here about Bond Street?
I think we have everyone else. So I'm just gonna,
Can you hear me?
Yes,
Yeah.
we can hear you.
so Chris Holton, is that for Bond Street?
Yep, Jim Kyle.
Okay, Jim, yeah. And I have Dave Smith.
Yes, sir.
Okay, here we go. All right, and you're all set, Jim. Also, we can hear you.
Brian, do you want to give an explanation of what's going on Bond Street, please?
Sure, as long as everybody's ready, we can go. Okay, so essentially a few weeks ago, Chuck and I met the Reading tree warden, Mike Hannaford, at 34 Bond. He's asked to consider a request from the homeowner. I think that's you, Chris, right? Chris Holton?
Hmm.
Okay, I'm pretty sure it's Chris Holton, one in the middle. It was
Okay.
about-
Yeah. I can see Chris. He does not appear to be muted, but I cannot, and it looks like he's talking and we're not hearing him. So I'm wondering if he has a microphone problem.
Yeah, how about now?
Yes,
Yep.
better.
Sorry about that. Yes,
That's fine.
I'm at
Okay.
30.
So there was a request to do some trimming or pruning of a tree towards the back of your property, which is bordering, it was near the conservation land that's back there. The conservation land is part of the Mallet or Mallet overall conservation space. There was some talk about the tree. In Mike's opinion, the tree would benefit from the pruning. But in the course of this visit, we noticed a few things. First of all, on 34 Bond, so that's your property, Mr. Holton.
Yeah.
The lawn extends well back beyond the tree, back actually into the conservation land. And that land, of course, is owned by the town of Reading, and it's we're the custodian owners of it. Additionally, next door at 38, I think that's you, Mr. Kyle. There was kind of a similar problem. In one respect, it was actually worse in that there was an existing shed that was fully onto the conservation land. Chuck actually filled me in that that was a known issue, and a previous commission had agreed that the shed could stay for as long as you were in the house, and then at that point it would need to be removed. So that was good to hear that there was a plan, if you will, in quotes, a plan in place to address that shed situation sometime in the future. And then the last one in that row that we looked at was 30 Bond Street. And at 30 Bond Street, it was similar in that the maintained land went back further than it should. In addition, it was actually a worn path going back a little bit further where there was lots of yard waste of various kinds, everything, leaves, grass, holly tree trimmings, and things of that nature. So bottom line is Chuck and Mike and I did a tour of the area and saw these 3 issues. And so we ended up sending a letter to each of you homeowners to see if we can get that remedied as quickly as possible. So before I get to the remedy, is there anything you want to say in regard to what I've said so far?
I guess I can start.
Okay.
Yeah, when I bought the house in 2011, there was an existing, what you consider like a historical compost pile, I guess you could say. And yeah, I'll own it. I do throw some grass out there. Not all the time, only when I can't mulch it because it's too long, or, you know, you've had a long wet spell, or I'm on vacation, I get home and the grass is out of control. I have thrown some grass back there, absolutely. So I own that, and I will get rid of it. I spoke to Chuck earlier today about this when I called to see if it was going to be on Zoom or in person. So that I completely understand. I'll take care of that. In regards to the maintaining of the land that's extended onto conservation land, I wasn't aware it was conservation land. It's been this way since I bought the home. It's been this way as far back as like 98. I can ascertain. I can trace it back that far. Can I share my screen and show you photos? Is that all right?
Sure can.
Okay. So, you guys see this? So this is my yard in 2011 before we bought the home. This was from a real estate listing. It was still online. I pulled it down. But this is essentially right here. This is what I thought was like the edge of my lawn and start of conservation land. This is summertime, so it's more overgrown in full bloom. And this is it today. It's, if you go back, you know, as a reference point, right? There's like a little rock garden here, okay? Now, it's same rock garden, and this is just because it's winter time, it's all dormant or dead. So I've done nothing, I didn't do anything to encroach on the land, I just maintained what was already there, you know, assuming it was my lawn, which now I know it's not.
Okay, so we understand now how it got to this situation. In fact, if you were to go over to your neighbor's property, and right in the middle in the ground, there's one of those granite markers that marks the edge of the property, and it's a straight line there, so you can just follow it over onto your space and see how far you should be going. Mr. Kyle, is there anything you want to add before I continue?
No.
Okay, that's good.
Brian, may I jump in just for a second? I just with the regards to the mowing, you know, we bought the house in 2016, and I've just maintained lawn that was there. So if the answer is don't cut the grass anymore, that's fine. It's a little bit less work I have to do. That's all right. You know, again, the lawn naturally grew in and followed that path along the growth versus what was clearly planted grass, and I just kept cutting the grass that was there.
Okay, so again, much like the last homeowner, we understand how it got this way. We understand what you've been doing. It's fairly common that people don't intentionally look any further to see exactly where the line is. I got lawn there, I keep on cutting the lawn, and I understand that. So the question then is, what do we do about this going forward? Simplest thing to do is just leave it alone, don't cut it, let nature have its way. Personally, from my perspective, and I would love to have the commission's thoughts on this, I would like to see a plan with some plantings put in that are wetland plants and what have you that are appropriate to that area and to that particular piece of conservation land, essentially to speed up the process of taking it back to the natural habitat. So actually, this may be a good place for me to stop and let the other commission members weigh in on the situation, on what they think the best remedies for this might be.
Anybody else on conservation have a thought they want to share or a question?
I'll start by saying that anything that makes things better than they are now, by better, I mean, increases the amount of buffer around the, resource area, seems good to me. So the, mow less, is, that certainly seems like an agreeable solution to me. Boy, I wish we had a conservation budget so we could maybe subsidize plantings. That is, because we're talking about planting on conservation land.
Hey, that's a good idea, Joe.
And I know, it's a context for Dave, Chris and company is that we are trying to get a budget for the Conservation Commission so that we could actually, do something besides talk. And if there had been, so if the, so as it is, I don't know, planting seems, and any additional planting in that area seems nice. I don't know if we can necessarily, I'm guessing what we can ask for is sort of nothing, as in the sense of, no, literally just do nothing in the area that isn't your land. And then, given that no one here seems to have been involved in the actual original encroachment, pretty every one of these, I've been poking at the aerial pictures while everyone was talking, and Reading GIS happily also says when the house is sold, so it's very easy to see pictures of yard that are older than everyone's than when the house is turned over. So
yeah, that's the problem, and that's why I said already a couple of times, we understand how it got here. Now we're trying to find the best way to put it back. So I guess what I'm hearing is some agreement that any dumping that's been happening will stop, and that any dumping that has happened, you will do the best you can to remove it. So I don't know if you can do it now. I don't know what condition it's in, but by the very least, if I sent you a follow-on letter that had a date by which you would get it removed certain, then you could, after that, contact Chuck and say it's cleared out and we could swing by. Does that make sense to everybody involved with that, as far as the area where the dumping went on?
That makes sense. But spring would be best, because more than likely it's frozen now.
I would think so.
So yeah, I have no problem with that. And in regards to the path, that was historically been there too. I actually have a trail cam. Is deer, of fox, coyotes, and it's also a cut through. Kids from like Lee Street and Hunt, they come through that area rather than going around. So yeah, it's regularly walked out.
Basically, you're saying is the last gentleman was blaming his in-laws and you're blaming the deer. Okay.
No, yeah.
Okay. So as far as stopping mowing it, well, that's easy this time of year, so I consider that done. But we will be assuming that you folks will figure out where that line is, which is easy. Like I said, there's a marker on 34 Bond. Just follow it out and leave beyond it alone. I would love it if you could find it in the recesses of your heart to talk to Chuck about maybe some plantings or seedings or something out there. But I'll leave that up to you and your conscience, and maybe in return for using it all these years. But as Joe was saying, it's conservation land, so in the end, it's ultimately our responsibility.
I just want to speak up about one thought, is if we just stop mowing something that has been grass, I'm afraid that things like garlic mustard and bittersweet and Japanese knotweed and all those invasives that we try to beat back might come happily taking over that space. So
You know what will happen? I'm not sure, the picture I showed you was all grown in.
Mhm.
I'm not sure what kind of greenage it is, exactly what plant it is. But that, you can see, it'll come out itself. That will itself take over that land.
So that's
Yeah.
the question is that a native plant or is that an invasive that's there?
Exactly.
And
Exactly.
something that should be looked at come spring when we see what's growing there.
So
Chuck,
the
you-
wetland, yeah, the wetland is filled with Phragmite or common reed.
Oh, lovely.
And I think that would, you know, grow upslope. And so, you know, these, I know there's a big request to plant, but I think that you should ask, I mean, these guys don't want that stuff kind of like towering next to their lawn, and they'll have a problem at that point too, because it grows from tubers. So I would monitor for that stuff. I wouldn't plant. I would let volunteer vegetation grow in. There may be some woody material, but if you see any invasives like the common reed, that's just in back, and you'll start to recognize that it just grows so quickly. It'll look like a corn stalk, and it'll be twice as big the next day. That's the kind of stuff that you want to watch out for, and you could enter the property and pull that out. Now, you're not going to see that look like a field in 1 year. It's going to take several years for the grass to grow enough, especially if it's like that fescue stuff, if it's real lawn grass or anything like that. But the volunteer vegetation will pull in, and you may think about planting out there, and that would save some of the work that you're doing on the common reed. You know, it's up to you. I mean, it looks nice. It's not going to look horrible unless you don't do anything at all. And you know, in our regulations, we allow invasive removal without a permit. So you can do that.
Okay, does that make sense? Now that Chuck and Martha have added some facts to this whole conversation, okay?
Yeah,
So I would really appreciate it if you guys could do that, take care of it. And at some point in the spring, I would probably be kicking Chuck to see if we can get permission to come out and see how things are going, if that's okay with you folks.
Sure.
I just want to keep Chuck busy, otherwise he plays solitaire all day, you know, it's tough.
Yeah, we should, I mean, it's not even, we need to at least kind of close the loop and check in on this, you know, with the invasive removal or the yard waste removal. I want to make sure that we have it right, but maybe, I don't know, June, end of June. Do you think that works, or did you want a little bit longer?
No, that makes sense, because it's going to take me a little bit to get it out of there. I mean, I'm assuming I'll bring to the compost. And I do have a truck, so I can get it out of there. It's just a matter of doing it by wheelbarrow, right? And I'm not sure how much is there. So.
Yeah, it's going to be hard to determine. I mean, we looked at it. I thought there was a lot that was turned into soil.
There was a lot of material.
A lot of soil, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it'd been that way for a while. Okay.
Brian, one quick question. So should I follow up with Mike on the tree? I think you mentioned a Mike earlier. It was the tree warden. Is that someone I should check into with about the tree? Because he said he was going to get back to me about that.
Yeah, I believe that's in Mike's purview unless Chuck corrects me. So yeah.
I can add some color to that. Mike did say that he's going to trim the tree. There was a couple, it needed some work.
Yeah.
He usually gets it on a list. I don't know if this is a written list or on the computer. And then when he has collected enough, that's going to happen. I think he's waiting for the ground to sufficiently freeze so he can get in there. But feel free, and you know about the C-Click Fix system on the DPW page. If you go to the DPW page, there's C-Click Fix. It's you just report your problem. You would click on tree, give them your address. They love a picture, and just ask them for a follow-up. It's assigned to different people by the DPW director, and she'll know about it and she'll send it to Mike, and Mike will get back to you. It's almost better to do it that way than to call him, because then you have this just running list of what you've asked, what he did, and then, you know, whatever your next question is.
Yeah, I know that I don't know if it was Mike that I spoke to originally or not, but when he came out, he was worried about the ground being too soft. This was a few weeks ago. But then now we're gonna get like 17 feet of snow, so we probably won't get a truck back there either. So, you know, I'll just follow up. That's fine.
If we get more than cinches, I'm gonna have some Jack Daniels, because I don't think we will.
Yeah, I don't know what we're getting, but I know those guys like to work, so it's if they can get in there, they will.
All right, thank you.
Thank you,
Okay.
all of you.
All right, and Joe has put C-Click-Fix URL in the chat if anybody wants to rescue that out of the chat before you sign off the Zoom. Okay, are we all set on this issue? And we thank you all for coming.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Good night.
Good night.
All right, is there anything else under old and new business we need to address tonight, it being now 10:10?
What about, where is that place? 48 pasture.
That's just an update. If you want to give one quickly, that's 2 minutes.
Okay.
Or I could do it.
No, that's fine, I can do it. I actually wrote something down, I might as well use it.
Great.
Let me see, I just find it. Okay, so if you remember, there was a question about the leaning oak tree. So Chuck and I went out there, we met with the homeowner, who's Joe Cicciarello. I'm sorry if I abused that. And we also briefly met with the neighbor next door, who's Vic Gilbert. He's the one who owns the house towards which the oak is leaning. Additionally, there was the certified arborist from Keith's Tree. I have his name here, but I can't find it right now. But basically, we stood around in the cold and talked about it for quite some time. It comes down to this: the certified arborist stuck to his belief that the tree was a concern. The homeowner was concerned that if it did fall, there would be some liability on his part. In fact, there was a minuscule microscopic length of time conversation about whether or not Reading would assume any liability. No. So in the end, after some brainstorming, we came up with a compromise, which is that the oak tree could be taken down. In return, in addition to the plantings that were already agreed to, the homeowner would plant an additional tree, a substantial tree, as it was called, things like sugar maple, something like that. We talked a bit about different varieties that might be able to be put in there to constitute this substantial tree. In the end, we agreed that the arborist knew what we were trying to get to, and we left it up to him to choose something appropriate for that area, that habitat. Just as a little added color to it, just by coincidence, when I went on the walk in the town forest for a review before that started the cutting, I got a chance to talk with Phil, who was last
Benjamin.
Phil Benjamin. Briefly, just while we were strolling around, we walked to all the different sites, and I asked him hypothetically about the situation with an oak tree that was leaning. It was originally steered in that direction by the roots of this large pine next to it. The pine was being removed. Just wanted to get his general sense of what that might mean for the life of the oak tree. And he wasn't even that concerned with how much it was leaning unless it was egregious. He felt that with the pressure removed, the tree would essentially from where it already had leaned out, it would grow up straight to the light. And without seeing the tree, he felt that it had high likelihood for a long and healthy life. So unfortunately, I didn't have that opinion before we reached a compromise, but I think the compromise achieves a number of different goals. It makes the homeowner feel more comfortable that he doesn't have the liability of a tree hitting his neighbor. The neighbor has an ease of mind because he was clearly concerned that he was going to have some wood saying hi to his bedroom. And the arborist got to stick to his guns on his professional opinion. So I think it achieved a number of different goals. I think, anything else, Chuck, that I missed?
No.
Okay.
Andrew, did you have your hand up?
Yeah, just for future, can we ask the tree warden, or is there someone that we could get an opinion of so that we're not relying on the guys taking the tree down, their professional opinion?
Yeah, we actually talked about that. I'll let Chuck give you the answer he gave me.
Oh my God, do I? Yeah, so Mike's a very busy guy and we're not on his, we're on his list, but I think that we need to use that resource sparingly. So he would certainly help out, but I couldn't keep calling him. This one didn't seem to need Mike. I mean, this could be figured out, you know. And Mike also told me he can tell someone that the tree's fine. He can go back to the shop and the tree would fall down, and that's just how it is. And so his opinion has to do with that moment, and it's not going to help out the tree. So he might have been in the same spot as us. I mean, so having the tree warden weigh in on the tree certainly gives us cover, but I think this is something that we could have handled when we were up at Bear Meadow and then we're taking down 12 trees. We needed him at that point. He needed to do a complete evaluation, you know, about that. But if you keep going to these sites visits and talking to trees, you pick up stuff and you understand. And I think it's always best to, you know, have a good sense of what the homeowner is going to be worried about. A leaning tree that's heading to a neighbor's property that's more within striking distance is going to be hard to, you know, kind of get them off the ledge on. And so the compromise was to just ask for, you know, a pretty big tree. And at the end of the day, with what Mike Hannaford says about, you just really never know, that tree, no matter what Phil Benjamin said, could have fallen down with a heavy snow load on it because it's leaning. So,
and the other thing I want to point out, just from an educational perspective, two of the things Chuck pointed out to me when we were there is the tree was leaning, but there was no cracked earth around the roots, indicating that it was getting some play and therefore was more at risk of uprooting entirely. Additionally, that day we were there, it was a very windy day and the top was swaying, but there's no movement down at the trunk near the ground, which is part of the reason I think it probably could have existed a long time, but the compromise was reached.
Okay.
I had a request before we end this, but it's for Joe if he's available. Do you anticipating talking about the budget and just bringing us up to date?
I was just realizing that's not on the agenda, but I was going to offer to talk about it if people wanted me to. I sent a brief email update to Martha and Danica and Chuck. Well, Chuck was there, obviously, so I CC'd Chuck on that update. Yes, Gene DeLios, assistant town manager, Chuck and I met on January 19th to talk about a conservation budget. We talked about the same items that we've talked about as a group before. Bear Meadow study, invasive management, and some conservation land upkeep. This being some of the main things. Based on the discussion at the previous select board meeting, I think we sort of steered towards separating the one-time Bear Meadow expense from the challenge of getting an operating budget for the Conservation Commission. But it sounds like both of those two challenges are solvable. with respect to the Bear Meadow land study, we are not the only board or commission that has some budget requests that were not included this year. So my plan is to reach out to the select board, which, you know, in theory, we are all the boards and committees are appointed by the select board, including us, to see about getting those requests rolled up together in an article that could be put before town meeting in April. And so that, I think, is our best chance at getting the Bear Meadow study funded in the near future. With respect to an operating budget, there was an interesting idea. I think Mark Doxer was the one who brought it up first at the select board meeting about trying to create a revolving fund involving fees that we collect. Now we collect fees for the state, and we collect fees for the town, wetland regulations, and the state has laws about how those state fees can be used. So never forget, from this point forward, forget about them. Because those are used, we have to vote on how they're used, but the law tells us how they can be used. They can be used to pay Chuck's salary. So every year we vote to use them to pay Chuck's salary. However, the fees that are imposed by the Reading bylaw, the use of those fees is something that the town of Reading, or rather Reading Town Meeting, could change. So today those fees just go into the general fund. They're not, it's funny, there is a Conservation Commission revolving fund, but that is how we handle third-party review. So people put money into that fund to pay for third-party review, and then the town pays, whoever we pay for third-party review out of that fund. I would need to talk to, I was planning to first express my intentions here to the select board because it was discussed at a select board meeting, but then to reach out to the bylaw committee to ask about advice on how to propose a bylaw change that would create a new Conservation Commission revolving fund that would, and we'd have to figure out what to call it because there is already a Conservation Commission revolving fund that just doesn't do what we want. That would be funded out of fees that we collect as people, apply for their, notices of intent and RDAs and so forth. And that some amount of that, not all of the fees we actually collect a pretty decent chunk of fees. I don't know if Chuck, if you actually ended up getting that number. I know it varies widely, and of course the last 2 years have been super weird in all these ways, but
$8,000 in the last year, but it's been like 30, 40, 50. The treasurer puts in a placeholder of $34,000 because that's usually what that fund and conservation generates. So I guess that's a a baseline.
Yeah. So relative to that income stream, I'm optimistic that we could, or I say we, I think actually I'd have to figure out exactly what needs to be. And the funny thing is, I'm pretty sure that town meeting could create this, a Conservation Commission revolving fund without actually needing Conservation Commission needing to vote on them doing it. Like it would be up to us to do anything with it, but I don't know if we actually need to take any vote or action to make it happen. But in any case, my plan was to make a proposal for bylaw change that would create a revolving fund that would be some, comparatively modest share of that $8,000 to $34,000, but something that meets the operating budget needs that we've identified, on the order of $2,500. I mean, that's what we talked about for invasive management and the conservation land upkeep. So those are the two ways that we were hoping to get a budget.
So to follow up on that, I had a follow-up meeting with Gene where we looked at Munis and we checked out what fees were in there and just kind of took a deep dive into Munis and all the funds. And apparently there's, believe it or not, $60,000 of available money within Munis that's tied to conservation. Most of it has to do with trails on property that we don't have permission to build trails on. So like Maplewood Village, we had permission. We have $12,000 in the account to build a trail that the condo commission won't allow us to do that. And that's not completely their fault. The strike while the iron is hot. When that order of conditions came through, one of the conditions was to build a trail. No one built a trail for like, I don't know, at least 3 turnovers of people that owned that place. So the new condo commission knew nothing about it, and they wanted it, and they just saw it as a big security issue. Plus, the boardwalk that was out there was subpar to what we build these days. So that would be a huge lift to build that trail. But the vision is to get REI involved, because the trail would basically be a loop around REI, and then half of that loop would be through the wetlands. But and then there's other things like that. So we looked at this fund, and Jean let me know that she didn't want the fund to live inside public services budget, and that we should go to the finance committee each year and make a request and kind of follow that request all the way through the town meeting process. So I don't know if that's what you were thinking, Joe. She also, which I found hilarious, is on the planner listserv, they had the document from MACC that spells out what the funds are and how they're used between the bylaw fund and the state fund. And she sent that to me and said that she thinks there's an answer in that. And the answer, as you pointed out, is to use the bylaw fees to create a revolving fund, but do it on a consistent basis, and fund your operating budget and justify that with a discussion with the finance committee. So I think that would be where we're headed, but things could change. I don't know what Mark Doxer thinks about this, but I just thought that he had something a little simpler in mind when he was saying just divert some of the money into a revolving fund.
Yeah, I mean, what do I say about this? I'm not worried about Mark or other people being surprised to learn that things okay, in real life are actually complicated, especially things that involve money. So
I would also say that I thought about the number of $2,000. I think we have so much deferred maintenance around here that we should really look at what a real number would be. And then once we've caught up on things, to come back to a more appropriate amount, 2,000, 3,500 a year or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So the umbrella of conservation spans over the Trails Committee and the Town Forest Committee. And if they wanted us to be involved in a purchase or some project that they have, it would be nice to give them money also. So,
yeah.
Hey, Chuck and Joe, question. Do you have an idea what neighboring towns of the similar structure would have for their budgets? Is that public information? I would think so, right?
I had looked into some towns, and it seems to be inside some other budget. Like at Jane Kinsella for the Trails Committee, I was asking if I could have access to the Trails Committee budget. She's like, oh, no, we don't give access because it's inside the DPW department's budget. And so I would have more access, and it seems like I would have more access than I actually need. So I could reach out to the neighboring towns who are kind of friendly, over the years. So like Linfield and stuff like that, I could find out, but it doesn't make sense to, ask a town that's not comparable to Reading.
Yeah, no, it has to be similar.
Right. I mean, the other answer, which is, I'm just repeating things that Chuck has said here, but that the answer is all over the place. That apparently Boxford can afford, apparently Boxford, the Conservation Commission retains control of all of the bylaw fees, which means they can buy a lot of jackets and some land.
I knew you know,
So,
and so,
yes.
some
Everybody
good,
goes to the Bahamas.
good.
Right. So, but yes, no, but seriously, but Chuck was saying that they actually, they actually use Conservation Commission controlled funds that come from bylaw fees to purchase conservation land.
Yeah, they're a
So it's
major
like-
player in that because they
Right, like-
have crazy money, like $200,000 over the course of years, and they don't, and they throw it around like, you know, like manhole covers. They're very
What a metaphor, but okay.
But no, I'm telling you, they're really concerned because that's their money, and if they can get it from the state or they can get someone else to buy in,
Sure.
they'll have
Yeah.
that for another day. I mean, it's
Yeah.
it's only built
Right.
its way up to 200,000.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, actually,
Right.
one of the questions I asked Chuck a while ago when I first began developing this enforcement obsession I seem to be under the spell of was about fines, where the fine money goes. And he sent me a document which describes that. So the good news is that wouldn't be money we could then use, which takes away the temptation to fine everybody. So we'd have a big kitty.
No,
So I'm actually glad about that, but just in case anybody else was wondering about
also, yes, absolves us from any, you know,
exactly.
right. No one's going to say, I think you're fining me because, you know, you want to build a trail.
Exactly.
Because we wouldn't get to build a trail with it. So there you go.
yeah.
If I mean, as it is, we're not, I mean, dare I ask Chuck, like, has the Reading Conservation Commission ever fined anybody?
When I first got here, there were several fines outstanding that
Mhm.
hadn't been paid, and the town was about to take these people to court. But that was a different time back then. There was a committee set up to abolish the wetlands protection bylaw. The commission was feverishly rewriting it. It seemed to be they had got off in the wrong direction, or over the course of the years become a bad committee,
Okay.
a very restrictive committee. And there were these fees. So I didn't want to pursue them. I didn't want to pursue them because I had
I like the part where there is no committee to try to abolish the Reading wetland bylaw.
I tried
like
to
that
use
part. Let's keep it that way.
I tried to use that as a feather in my cap, but apparently it's only noticed when there is a committee, but when there's not a committee and you say, hey, look,
There's no committee.
over the course of 10 years, that hasn't
That's-
happened again. Don't you think that has something to do with my style? No,
Well,
there's no credit there.
I will say that I was happy to see the reaction to the letters that were sent out, both from the perspective that a number of them showed up when the letters asked them to, and also from the willingness to comply that we saw tonight in every homeowner who was here. So that's encouraging because it makes it more likely we get things fixed and less
Right.
likely we have to get to
Yes.
the point we may have to find
No,
someone.
no bad cops needed. Thank you.
And by the way, in case you hadn't noticed, that was a result of Chuck and I having a little cabal on the side and sending out letters that did include your names. Just, so you know, listed all the
Just in case you're
commissioners.
shopping around town.
Yeah.
Something. Just want to let you know. Well, it was Brian's idea, but
I believe we all knew that our names were on the top of that letter. At
Good.
least I did know.
Yes.
well, it needs to be
I didn't, but just Brian, don't make me sorry that I didn't know. That's all.
So far, so good.
okay. I don't know if there's anything else.
I have one last thing. So at the very last minute tonight, I sent out to you guys my first draft of an attempt at the annual report. So please feel free to bleed all over it. I did try and pull information from meeting minutes from before Joe and I joined. I don't know if you know of anything that I missed. If you don't like how I wrote it, absolutely feel free to, just chop and skewer.
Yeah, that would be great.
Thank you
I-
for working on that, Brian.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
That's a man to be retired, right?
Before we let everybody off the hook, we are needing someone to volunteer to go to the February DPW/conservation meeting. Is there, Brian, are you volunteering?
Yeah, I actually have a topic.
That would be wonderful.
Yeah. That sounds good. I'd like that. So when's that one again? February what?
It's the first Tuesday in February. It's like the first Tuesday every month at 1 o'clock.
Yeah,
think
that's
that's
what I
next
thought.
Tuesday.
I wanted to check.
So expect to be talking about, I'm not going to mention his name, but a certain Good Samaritan that's been cleaning out
Oh,
the
yeah.
backwooded areas.
Yeah.
Apparently, he struck a chord and he's pulling out creosote-soaked telephone poles, which are very expensive to remove.
Yeah.
Oh, boy.
Well, the problem is when it's part of the old dump, and I said, I can't imagine that the Conservation Commission didn't ask for those to be removed. I mean, this seems to be an oversight and they shouldn't be there in the first place. So they kind of wanted they wanted the commission's support to, ask this gentleman, or just to say, look, you can't be working in the wetlands. This is disturbance, blah, blah, blah. But consistently he's pulling out trash. So it's hard to say that. But in this case, I think the commission would actually say, if he's not doing it, the town should have taken care of that when the landfill was capped. I mean, we do not want the creosote soaking into the water to be part of that. I mean, that's how many years is that going to be there?
Yeah.
So it seems to be a problem. Ryan Percival, the town engineer, was going to look into it and get back to me.
And Chuck, trying to remember, but the last time we talked after a site visit, there was something else we wanted to bring up with DPW. Okay, if it comes to you, just shoot me an email and I'll try to remember when it's not 10:35.
So yeah, we'll have it before the first Tuesday.
Yeah.
1 o'clock.
Okay.
All right. I know Andrew's ready to leave. He backs up his chair like 5 inches each.
Physically withdrawing
Yeah.
from the meeting.
Well, yeah, what he's doing really is he doesn't want to be involved with all this
Yeah,
conversation.
it's a signal. It's a
He wants to
signal.
say you're on there.
Well, okay, so we don't have any minutes to vote on yet, right?
I'm gonna have 3 minutes for the next meeting.
Good.
All of them came in with the last couple of days, but I wasn't gonna do that to you guys.
Right, okay, so
So-
send them out as soon as you can and give us plenty of time to read them over before the next meeting.
Okay.
That would be great,
Yeah, we're actually gonna need more than 3 minutes to read them over.
right,
Never mind.
yes.
It was weak.
Yeah, I
Okay.
was about to say, you clearly need to go to bed, Brian. All right.
Okay, can I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Everyone in favor, raise your hands. Okay, good night, everybody.
Good night, everybody.
You too.